Okay, welcome everyone. Tonight we're going to meet some of the candidates vying for a spot on City Council this October. We're going to get to know who they are and what they stand for, and we're going to ask them some very tough questions. So get ready because this should be a lot of fun. My name is Christine Teleski, and I am honored to be your host this evening. I want to say thank you, first of all, to the Aeolian Hall for hosting these events, and all of you for taking the trouble to come down and join us in person. I also want to thank all the candidates for coming and being here and taking the time out to really engage and help us get to know them and what they stand for. Tonight, we will be hearing from the candidates in wards 5 and 6, and we will make it very clear which candidate you're hearing from and which ward they belong to, so there will be no confusion on election day. So let's meet them now. Starting from the far, I guess it's my right or your left, we have Shiv Chokani, who is running in Ward 5. Next to Shiv, we have Stephanie Marantet Di Battista, also Ward 5. Randy Warden, running in Ward 5. Feel free to give a wave there, guys. It's okay. There's Randy. Shane Clark, running in Ward 5. And Maureen Cassidy for Ward 5. Phil Squire is running in Ward 6. And Mike Bloxham is running in Ward 6. And I'll also mention Charles Knott is running in Ward 5 but was unable to attend. So we're sorry he won't be able to be here this evening. So, without further ado, let's get started with our opening statements. We are going to start at the far end with Shiv Chokani. Please give him a round of applause as he comes up.
Thank you, Christine, Andrew, Rogers TV, my fellow candidates, and all the audience for coming in. A democratic vote for bus rapid transit for all London residents. I am Shiv Chokani, a well-educated certified jeweler, certified gemologist. I'm a gold medalist in my profession. Successful local businessman residing in London, Ontario, in Ward 5 for more than a decade. My business has won several awards in Canada for excellence in design and innovation. Over the years, I have supported several local charities such as London Health Sciences, Special Olympics Canada, Hutton House, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and many more. London has complex challenges and lack of good representation at the City Hall. This has compelled me to enter the nomination race. I wish to address a few issues such as better accountability, more transparency, sincere community input and improvements to make London better, to use our city tax dollars wisely and deliver services needed for our community, put London on the track of recovery, support local job creators and make a stronger community. Okay. Vote and elect me as a City Councillor of Ward 5. I, Shiv Chokani, will be a voice in City Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shiv. Next is Stephanie Marantet Di Battista for Ward 5.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Stephanie Marantet Di Battista, and I am running for Ward 5 City Councillor. So I came to London, Ontario when I was 21 years old to attend law school at Western. Since that time, I'm now a master's student pursuing my LLM. I've started a business. I'm a lawyer with my own practice here. I've chosen London to be the place to start a family, and I've also become heavily involved in the London community. So I've had an awesome opportunity to serve on local charity boards such as the Red Shoe Society, Big Brothers Big Sisters. I've been a part of the Arthritis Society, and I've also had the opportunity to serve on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm running for City Council because I'm passionate about London. This is the place that, out of all the places that I've lived in the world, I chose to make my home. And I think that the best way that I can serve my community and to give back is to be a strong voice and a strong advocate for Ward 5, as well as all of London on City Council, because that's what I do. Every single day, I get up and I advocate on behalf of others.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Next is Randy Warden for Ward 5.
A lot of tall candidates today. My name is Randy Warden. I was born and raised right here in London. I've been a resident of Ward 5 for the past 19 years. I'm blessed with a very supportive family that I love dearly. Many are here tonight. And also with a strong sense of community, and many neighbors and friends are here tonight, and I thank you for coming. Following school, the military taught me leadership is best demonstrated by looking after your troops. This has been my practice as an employer and as a community leader. This transitions into public service with a purpose to look after your constituents. Mine has been a life of service, including military and peacekeeping, and giving back to our community through engaged participation with countless service clubs, community organizations, and veteran associations, including the Rotary Club, London Celebrates Canada, the Royal Canadian Legion, London's Community Safety and Crime Prevention Advisory Committee, and countless other organizations. You can count on me to make principled decisions, and I won't let emotion cloud my judgment on big decisions, including the flawed bus rapid transit plan.
Thank you, Randy. Next is Shane Clark for Ward 5.
Hi, my name is Shane Clark and I'm running for City Council in Ward 5. I've lived in London for my whole life. I was born at St. Joseph's Hospital. I attended Sir John A. Macdonald, Montcalm, Fanshawe, and King's College. I've lived in Wards 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, and 13. I know London. I know the neighborhoods. I know the people. I know the folks who are thriving, and I know the folks who are struggling. I've spent the last 9 years getting to know the people in London who are struggling the most. I've spent years walking alongside London's most vulnerable folks as a child and youth worker, as an autism support worker, as a street-level outreach worker, as a housing stability team leader, and as the coordinator of a local poverty reduction program. I also know that London is a city of tremendous opportunity. I have friends who are tech entrepreneurs, artists, restaurateurs, and skilled tradespeople. I have friends who are thriving, and I have friends who will access an emergency shelter tonight. I think that they all deserve to have their voices heard and valued. I'm ready to hear those voices and to serve my community and my city as a member of London City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. And Maureen Cassidy.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Maureen Cassidy, and it's been my honor to represent Ward 5 at City Hall. In 2014, London's future was uncertain, but 4 years after you elected me, we've witnessed a remarkable turnaround. We've reduced London's debt by $24 million. Unemployment rates have gone from record highs to below both the national and provincial averages, and we're in the middle of a building boom never before seen, with over $1 billion in building permits issued each year of this council term. Proof of private sector confidence in our economic strategies. I chaired or sat on all of the committees responsible for this. We also face challenging issues here in London, and the solutions require more than simplistic bullet points on campaign websites. I co-chaired the poverty panel that came up with a plan that is seeing results. We've gone from uncertainty to optimism in 4 short years, but now we must build on this momentum. I have the experience Ward 5 needs to continue with the strategies that are already working and to continue seeking lasting solutions to the problems we face. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. And for Ward 6, Phil Squire.
I'm so proud to be here tonight. I'm proud to be here on behalf of the ward that I represent, Ward 6, and also the citizens and the rest of the City of London. I made myself 2 promises when I was elected. The first was I would never lose sight of the people who elected me, the people from Ward 6, and what they viewed as being important. And I hope that I've upheld that throughout my term as a councillor. But the second thing I was determined to do is not to be a normal politician and try to spin things in a way that would confuse people and they wouldn't know where I stood. The one thing I've been able to do is when I have a view, when I have a point of view, I express it. And I'm forthright with people and I let them know what I think on a particular issue. And I'm proud of that. My wife sometimes is a little worried about that, but overall I'm quite proud of that. And I'm looking forward to this campaign, I'm looking forward to this evening, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to serve the ward that I've lived my entire life in, Ward 6.
Thank you, Phil. And also for Ward 6, Mike Bloxham.
Good evening. My name is Mike Bloxham, and I'm here to tell you that government matters, politics matters, and whom you elect matters. I have a lifetime habit of service to my community, starting about 20 years ago during my high school years at South Secondary, when I started volunteering at the London Food Bank, where I've been a volunteer for nearly 2 decades. Actually, I've been on staff for the last 2.5 years there. So I now have firsthand knowledge of the effects of poverty on London residents, and I've made poverty and homelessness a priority for me. I'm also the past president of ACO London, so I've experienced fighting to protect built heritage in our city and to make responsible planning decisions that will preserve London's character and avoid urban sprawl. I'm also a board member at Reforest London, so I have lots of experience with protecting natural areas and the importance of planting trees for the city's health and environment. I'm also on the Advisory Committee for the Environment at City Hall, where I've been chair for 2 terms, and I have a track record of advising City Council on environmental issues and responsibility to sustainability and becoming a resilient city.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
Don't worry, they'll all get much more time to speak. We're just getting started. I know the big issue that everyone wants to talk here about tonight is bus rapid transit, so we're going to kick it off with that. We're going to give the people what they want. We are starting our big topics here, so each candidate will have 2.5 minutes to present a platform on these issues. The first one being BRT. So London's $500 million bus rapid transit project is the largest in our city's history, and it's been a major issue for this term of council. It's going to be a major issue for many years to come, particularly for the candidates or councillors who are elected in. So I would like to hear from each of the candidates here this evening. Do you support BRT? Why or why not? And do you propose an alternative if you do not support it? We will be starting this time with Stephanie.
Hello again. So to answer the first question, I do not support the current BRT plan. That being said, as someone who was a student and did attend Western, I absolutely understand the need for great transit. This plan is not the right way to go, though. First and foremost, the routes are wrong. This plan is meant to help people who are students, who are perhaps lower income, who rely on transit to get to work, and people who have made the personal choice to use public transit as their method to get around. However, there's huge portions of the city that do not have access to transit. This is a big problem in Ward 5. Anyone north of Fanshawe Park Road doesn't have access to it. The terminus is at Fanshawe, not at Argyle Mall, and that needs to be rethought. Second, it's not clear what the tax consequences are going to be for Londoners with this plan. We have information about the province and the federal government making commitments. However, those commitments are contingent on passing a business case analysis. Also, too, it's not been made clear what the sacrifice is going to be for that $130 million that the city is going to contribute. We don't know if services are going to be cut. We don't know, if taxes are going to go up. We simply don't have the answer to that. Also, too, this is going to cause massive congestion. We're taking 2 major throughways, Richmond and Oxford, down to 2 lanes. And we're going to do that without dealing with the trains, which the buses will still be stuck behind just like the rest of us. So streets that are already a parking garage when it's rush hour every single day are going to be even worse. And that's not fair to people who have to rely on a vehicle. Also, this is absolutely going to gut our downtown. And any plan that suggests that we should create a transit system where we don't actually have anywhere to go once we're done constructing it is not the right way to go. Now, my alternative proposal would be to listen to the people who actually take the bus. And most of them complain about things like, I'm a nurse. I can't get to my shift on Sunday morning at 7 a.m. I'm constantly reprimanded for being late because there aren't buses that can get me there. Or I'm a factory worker, but I can't take a job in the east end of the city because the buses don't actually take me to where the employment is. And the exact same thing is true for the employers that have been looking for labor to be able to fill positions within their factories. I think the way that we would best address this, and I haven't costed it out, but I doubt it costs $500 million, would be to revamp the schedules in a way that makes sense. So that instead of having a 5-day schedule, we would actually have a 7-day schedule to allow people to get to shift work. And we would redo the routes and add more buses in order to allow workers to get to where the employment is.
Okay, Stephanie, I apologize. That is your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Randy Warden on BRT.
Can I bank time? No BRT. I'm kidding. I'm not going to regurgitate some of the statistics you're hearing. You're going to hear more, I imagine. The BRT is flawed. A better plan is needed. Key transportation should connect key transportation. The BRT, it fails to connect with the airport, the train station, the bus depot, and this is just wrong. If implemented, there is a foreseen ridership problem afterwards, and this boils down to being a transit tax on Londoners. And I've heard many times going door to door, no more money. No one can afford another tax. The London plan introduced a transit village as a key component of the BRT. The London Plan is selectively interpreted by this council. The London Plan, it has ignored quality of life considerations, including transitional elevation and the shadowing effect. We're seeing this at 230 North Center Road right now. Further, this council has ignored the community feedback we heard at that planning meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Next is Shane Clark.
I didn't purchase my first vehicle until I was 27 years old. Up until then, I got around via public transit. I went to work on the bus and I went to school on the bus. I can't tell you how many times I was waiting for the bus on Richmond Street to go to Western, and the bus I needed would drive right past me because it was too packed with other students to let anyone else on. Getting to work was often a headache as well, as I would have to make my daily decision as to whether I wanted to arrive to work 20 minutes early or 10 minutes late. Arriving places at my desired time was often not an option. And if I had to get across town in transfer buses, it could easily take an hour to an hour and a half to get somewhere that I could have driven in 20 minutes. London is a growing city, and we ought to have a better transit system in place. We are a college and university town. Tens of thousands of students come here each year, and many of them stay. To accommodate this population growth, we ought to have a transit system that works for people and moves them throughout the city comfortably and efficiently. BRT is the one issue that everyone asks me about. Out of all the resident emails that I've received since entering this race, I've only received one email that wasn't about BRT. I have heard from people who are in favor of BRT, and I've heard from people who are against BRT. What I can tell you is this: I've not heard from transit users who are opposed to the BRT plan. I've yet to receive a single email from a low-income worker saying, "Scrap BRT, I don't want to get to work on time." I've not received any phone calls from elderly folks saying, "Scrap BRT, I like standing in the snow for a half hour waiting for my bus." I've not had any Londoners with mobility challenges contact me to say, "Scrap BRT, I enjoy the challenge of seeing if I can squeeze my walker onto a standing room only bus filled with college kids." Currently, London is the only city our size in all of Canada that does not have a rapid transit system already in place. We are falling behind. The current BRT plan would get us caught up with our municipal counterparts and would do so at a cost that is relatively low compared to rapid transit programs that have been implemented by other municipalities. With that said, the BRT plan is not perfect. It will not address all of London's transportation woes. Yes, we will still need to address railway crossings. Yes, there will undoubtedly be challenges that will need to be mitigated during the construction phase, and the city will need to work with both business owners and residents to mitigate those challenges. But BRT is a better public transit system than the one we currently have, and it will be effective at getting people to school and work quicker, which is the goal of the project. The BRT plan is affordable. It lays the foundation for future city building. It will improve upon our current public transit system without reinventing the wheel, and Londoners who depend on public transit know that it is overdue. I support the BRT plan.
Thank you, Shane. Maureen Cassidy for Ward 5.
BRT is one part of an overall plan which will make it easier to travel across our city. First, let's talk about the two parts of this project that are on the minds of most people living in North London: Richmond Street and the CP rail crossing at Adelaide. Today, Richmond Street is a parking lot with 80,000 more people and at least 40,000 more cars expected in London over the next 20 years. It will only get worse. Removing buses from car lanes means no more sitting behind a bus as it loads or offloads passengers. And dedicated left and right turn lanes mean no more sitting behind cars trying to make a turn. The only reason we're talking about Adelaide Street rail crossing in 2018 instead of 2035 is because of BRT. That crossing is blocked by trains for over 2 hours every single day. Plus, as a part of the overall plan, we're widening Western and Wharncliffe roads. All of this will result in significant improvements in how we travel north and south. And what about the cost? The province has committed $170 million for this project after a full year of study because it makes sense. London's share, $130 million, will come mostly from development revenues and not your property taxes. And the remaining amount is federal money. The federal and provincial money has already been set aside for transit projects like this one. There's only one taxpayer, that's right, and guess what? You've already paid for this. The federal and provincial transit funding is your money. Would you rather have your tax dollars spent in Toronto? I want our money spent here. I want us to create hundreds of jobs, improve roads, and fight congestion in London. I want London to get its fair share. These roads are old and we have to fix them anyway. Doing it this way means that 80% of the cost will be funded by other levels of government, not your property taxes. Any candidate opposed to BRT should be honest enough to tell us exactly how they plan to upgrade this infrastructure and build the new roads to accommodate the growth without raising property taxes. We have to keep moving forward if we're going to meet the demands of our growing economy. There are still many decision points for council and opportunities for consultation along the way. There will be ample time to continue to refine and improve the plan. After all, this is a 10-year project, and I will continue to represent you as it takes shape. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Phil Squire for Ward 6.
You know, I represent Ward 6, which is really ground zero for BRT. And as I told you in my opening statement, I listen to my constituents. And all of the community associations in Ward 6 have told me that they do not want bus rapid transit on Richmond Street. They don't want bus rapid transit on a route that has a rail impediment, that will have its car lanes reduced by 2, and that will require us to work out a contract with Western University that we haven't even completed that will cost taxpayers millions of dollars. The simple solution, and the one I offered from the very beginning, and the one that I continue to offer, is that we should be using the areas that we have already made infrastructure improvements, the Warncliffe Western Road route. Now, it's not just Phil Squire saying that, it's not just his community associations, it's also Western University. Their Board of Governors resoundingly said that was the route that they preferred, but if we were going to choose to go through Western University, we were going to pay for it with your tax dollars. It's very difficult for me to see how divisive this argument is. When I meet people at the door, they say to me, we expect you, if re-elected, to solve this issue and this divisiveness. We expect you to propose a transit system that makes sense for everybody in London. And with some alterations, we can do that, but it's going to take flexibility. It's going to take hard work, and I'm prepared to go back to the table to get that done. But what it doesn't require is people to take two opposite positions. I hate BRT, and I love BRT as is, and never move from those positions. I'm here tonight to say we can get this issue solved, and it's the responsibility of the next council to do that, and I want to be on at the table to make sure that happens.
Thank you, Phil. And Mike Bloxham for Ward 6.
Well, as we know, rapid transit will provide London with a reliable transit system that is a sustainable solution to many of our current traffic woes. It may not be a 100% perfect plan, but there's lots of room over the next 10 years to refine and improve that plan, and we must get started as soon as possible. These road improvements need to happen anyway, and leveraging those federal and provincial funds is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we can't pass up. Otherwise, the City of London will have to bear the entire $500 million cost, which would mean an increase in property taxes that would not be sustainable. The cost of doing nothing would be much higher. And with the bus-only lanes, that means we will have car-only lanes, and that will make personal travel easier for those who still need to use their single-occupancy vehicles. Not to mention, the corridor will become a development corridor, and that will encourage new growth and making the system more cost-effective over the long term as more residents live along transit routes. City Council must set the direction for how our city grows, because it will be the Londoners of tomorrow that have to live with the decisions we make today. The London Plan set out clear goals for building inward and upward, and that is thankfully what we're starting to see. Bus rapid transit is an important part of that vision. It's important to acknowledge the construction will be disruptive for the short term in Old North and potentially Cherry Hill residents, but a better system is worth the short-term convenience, short-term pain for long-term gain. Cherry Hill residents in particular will be likely to use transit more often, and they all deserve better connections to the rest of the city. Rapid transit lines will be the backbone of our new transit system, allowing for expanded routes throughout the neighborhoods and into commercial and industrial zones and out to places like the airport and down to the 401. Beyond rapid transit, I would also like to see a restoration of the seniors discount pass so that our seniors who are on a lower income can get by easier month to month, and expanded service hours for the existing routes until BRT is fully implemented so that we can get shift workers home throughout the week in the later hours and on weekends. It's important that people can get to and from their destinations at times that are convenient, especially for those who work odd shifts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Shiv Chokani for Ward 5.
Hi, everyone. So my candidate, other fellow candidates have filled in with the rest of the stuff. So let me cut to the chase. When was the last time City of London actually completed in the exact amount of money it has projected in? It's normally 10 to 40% more than the projected value. And the reasons are time delay, inflation, so on and so forth. Who pays for that extra? Taxpayers, you and me. Me as a taxpayer, being very honest to you, my vote is no for the London Rapid Transit. But as I'm standing for the City Council, it's not about me, it's about us, which most of the candidates have failed to actually issue. So desperate time, desperate measures. I, Shiv Chokani, on July 27th, myself filed a nomination for City Ward Councillor for Ward 5. And on 29th of July, wrote an open letter to Mayor Matt Brown requesting for a democratic, a referendum, yes and no vote for the BRT for all the residents of London. It has been 3 weeks. I haven't heard from Mr. Mayor's office. City Clerk Kathy Saunders did respond, and she said election ballots have been sent for printing. I am the only candidate in the municipal election to take immediate action. It's no time wasting. It's no if I get elected. To take immediate action and asking the mayor to do this, stop this. This is the first step. It's the largest project in the history of London. And we, you, me, the taxpayers, are not involved in this. I've knocked on several doors. I've spoken to a few of you just downstairs, and everyone has their own opinion if we want or do not want the BRT for different reasons. So before this actually gets into a factual thing, which the current City Council has already moved on to, because the vote from the current City Council from Ward 5 is not my vote. It's not a vote from a lot of residents of Ward 5 I've actually spoken to. So this doesn't resonate to what I actually want in the City Hall. It doesn't resonate to what the taxpayers want in the City Hall. It's not about what a councillor or friends and family program wants. It's about what all of us want. So the first thing for me, if you elect me as the City Councillor for Ward 5, I promise I will personally go on a signature drive if the current City Council, if the future City Council that is elected, do not opt for a referendum for the BRT. Thank you. Kindly elect me.
Thank you very much, everyone. That was fun. Are we having fun yet? Excellent. Let's dive into another spicy issue, taxes. The 2018 overall residential tax rate in London is 1.350819%. Roughly. And those taxes, those monies go towards funding things like local school boards, fire and police services, transportation, and parks and rec. What do you think of our current taxes? Should they increase or decrease? And if so, how would you make up the difference? Or how would you spend the additional funds? We'll be starting this time with Randy Warden for Ward 5.
The topic of taxes is an interesting one when you're talking to people at the door. They immediately tell you how much they spend on their particular house. What I find interesting when we talk about taxes is, first of all, just for the record, our property tax is unaffordable to many Londoners, and I'm hearing this time and time again. It's, the process is problematic. This council has seen the cost of living as an acceptable target to begin this dialogue with property tax increases. They fail to appreciate that many property owners are on fixed incomes and do not enjoy annual cost of living increases. The consumer price index should be an economic indicator, not a target. Let's budget to our needs. Let's prioritize to our needs. what's driving me crazy is the mindset. We need to get away from this mindset that it's okay to take the family to Disney World when we have critical things that need to be fixed on our own house. So I'd like to see taxes kept at a minimum and only increased if we've identified there's an absolute need to increase. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Next up is Shane Clark for Ward 5.
With regard to whether or not I see tax rates changing, we know already that some folks' property taxes have gone up and will continue to do so. This is because London's property values were reassessed in 2017. For some people, their assessment value increased, and for some people, it decreased. For those who saw their values decrease, they would have seen their taxes go down in 2017. For those whose assessed values increased, they will have seen their taxes increase in a phased-in approach beginning last year and continuing until 2020. This is something that happens regardless of what goes on around the horseshoe at City Council. Reassessments are calculated by a provincial crown corporation. Will other factors contribute to changes in local taxation? I certainly hope not. In terms of my political ideology or values, I tend to think of myself as a progressive, but with that said, I think that anyone who occupies a public office and is paid with public funds has an obligation to be a fiscal conservative to some degree. Elected officials, regardless of their political ideology, must acknowledge that people work hard for their money and don't really like handing their money over to taxation. I believe that elected officials have an obligation to spend as little of the taxpayers' money as possible and to ensure that the money that is spent gets spent wisely. With that said, we must acknowledge that some situations will call for municipal investment. Communities have roads that need mending and problems that need solving. Sometimes factors beyond our control can influence how much revenue the city must collect. For example, our provincial government just hit the brakes on funding supervised consumption sites in many Ontario cities. This could be an indicator that our own site could lose funding at some point. If that is the case, how will the province choose to address the opioid crisis that's happening here in London and many other Ontario cities as well? If the province chooses a tough on crime, arrest your way out of the problem approach, then we may have to divert more revenue to policing. Right now, police services already gets the lion's share of your municipal taxes. If we do have to divert more money to policing, where does that money come from? Do we reallocate money from capital financing and let our infrastructure slide? Do we pull money out of social services? With the slashing of the planned social assistance rate increase, we can't really pull money out of social services because we need funded agencies to fill the gap by our underfunded social assistance programs. In order to address some of London's complex challenges, we may have to either increase revenue or decrease spending from other areas in order to divert resources. Having spent years working hand in hand with the City of London on poverty-related projects, I can tell you that I don't see a lot of room for cuts to programs and services. With that said, Londoners have my commitment that I will always attempt to find solutions to problems that don't involve dipping into the taxpayer's pocket. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Maureen Cassidy for Ward 5.
Thanks. Tax rates always require a broad conversation with Londoners. We have to ask ourselves, what services should we keep and what should we cut? That's why I'm a strong supporter of public consultation during budget talks. Over the past 4 years, we've seen an average annual increase, as we heard of, the average annual was 1.8% for residential properties, and as we heard in 2018, it was 1.3%. The number you often hear reported is higher than this, and that's because they fail to break out the residential rate from the industrial and commercial rates, which are considerably higher. It's all about making sure London is competitive, affordable, and sustainable. We have a $1 billion budget. It's vital that we never stop looking for savings and efficiencies. Londoners want to know that they're receiving value for their money. I need to make sure we're spending responsibly so you continue to receive the services you expect and need at a cost you can afford. We have to make difficult decisions to achieve these goals. From an operating budget perspective, the city is similar to any business or homeowner dealing with increased costs for things like fuel and electricity. Then there are labor costs. As these costs increase, the city, just like a family, has to make hard choices. We work with our boards and commissions like police services and the conservation authorities, who make up 1/3 of our overall operating budget. Most of this spending is mandated by the province. We don't have a choice. They provide the service, we pay the bill. From a capital budget perspective, there are long-term consequences associated with candidates that promise tax cuts or zero increase targets. Promising you more for less is at best disingenuous, and at worst, it's dishonest because somebody always has to pay. It's about striking the right balance between paying now or paying later. In total, London has $10.9 billion worth of core infrastructure with a funding gap of $52 million. This could grow to almost $500 million within the next 10 years if we don't manage it properly. It's like maintaining a home. If the roof needs to be repaired, you should do it now, or you'll end up paying more in the long run. Strategic plans, multi-year budgets, service review, and programs like Lean Six Sigma that have found millions of dollars in savings, all of these are important, and it's what we've done. The most efficient way to manage our assets is through well-planned investments, making the right investment at the right time for the right amount. I've done that for the past 4 years, and if re-elected, I'll keep doing it. Thank you.
And Phil Squire for Ward 6.
I'll try to simplify this for you. You're looking at the councillor who every year has either spent the least amount on expenses or the second least amount on expenses. I treat tax dollars the same as I treat my own money. A 0% tax increase as the last council attempted, it's not reasonable. But what is reasonable is to do better than we've been doing. Every year that the budget's been presented at City Hall, I've done my own budget in my own way, and I've always kept the tax increase under 2%. So I haven't been able to support the 2.8% that you've seen year in and year out. We have multi-year budgets that have built-in tax increases. We're not making the hard decisions we have to make. And that doesn't mean cutting out core services. What it means is saying no to consultants, saying no to exorbitant legal fees. I can tell you that since I've been a councillor at City Hall, I've seen millions and millions of dollars spent without any return on that investment. It takes hard work, and it makes for hard decisions. But we have to stand up and say, look, sometimes we have to say no, but we have to meet the core responsibilities of the City of London, and I will continue to do that. You can listen to people all day tell you about what a great job they've done on budgeting. Let me tell you, we can do a lot better.
And Mike Bloxham for Ward 6.
Since property taxes provide the annual budget for crucial city services, Londoners do need to understand how they work so that we can discuss how to make them better. About 15% of your property tax bill is a provincial tax to fund education. The rest goes into the annual budget for city services. That includes everything the city provides: police, fire, and ambulance services, roads, sidewalks, transit, parks, trails, museums, recreation centers, and libraries. Ontario municipalities only receive 9% of tax revenues, and yet we're responsible for over 50% of the infrastructure. I can't promise to make your taxes go away if I'm elected. I wish I could, but I can't. What I can promise is that I will consider every decision and every vote, and whether the proposal at hand provides good value for taxes for what Londoners pay. And of course, that doesn't mean that we can get rid of everything that isn't police, garbage collection, or transit. The other parts of the city budget, things like culture and recreational facilities, are also crucial to making London a good place to live, but they need to make sense. Part of being respectful for taxes that Londoners pay is making sure the city grows in a responsible and sustainable fashion. The more spread out a city becomes as it grows, the less efficient and the more expensive it is to provide adequate transit, waste removal, and utility services. On council, I will support budgeting and planning decisions that provide Londoners with good value for the public dollar. I will work to ensure that your taxes are spent in meaningful ways that improve our city. I will also ensure that you have access to information about large projects to see how the city is doing with implementing a citizen dashboard, which would be on the City of London website, and that would track the progress of projects to make sure that they are on budget and on time. It's been very successful in other cities, and it's about time London adopted one as well.
Thank you, Mike. Shiv Chokani for Ward 5.
Hi, this reminded me of something. From work, I came back home one of these days. It was maybe a few months ago. And I actually put on Channel 13, Rogers TV, and I saw the City Hall, it's on there. And they were discussing they have some surplus money. And what should the candidates, they asked all the sitting candidates, what can we do without this money? And I was sitting on the couch and I said, oh my God, give me my money back. If you have surplus, there is nothing called surplus. It's the money that you have taxed us. Can we have our money back? And then the second option would be, second thing that comes to my mind, is pay off city debt. Not find another ways, another projects, another things where you want to spend my money. On the same note, no doubt with the current city projects in the pipeline, such as the BRT, city tax will be much higher in the future. To cut down on unnecessary spending in the City Hall is very vital, making sure the residents of London get the most value for the money, a bang for their buck. We need to have a good plan to help support and promote local businesses that are also bringing in steady taxes, which is not the case currently at the City Hall. Another incident I can tell you and share with you. Recently, City Hall uses the impact to assess value in London for residentials and businesses. So property in London was valued at $15 million in 2016. And right now, 2018, it's valued at $31.5 million. In 2020, it's valued at $47 million. It's a commercial property. I have the report right here with me. It's a faulty report. There is no way more than 200% in 4 years, city taxes and property value has gone up. What this has done is, this has actually raised the taxes. What the City Hall has done is, okay, this is the new impact report, let's raise the city taxes. And you, at no fault of yours, have to go to City Hall and impact and request them to correct this. Till the time impact corrects this, City Hall is still collecting the large amount of taxes from us, which is absolutely wrong. What should be done by the City Hall, there should be checks and balances. So if your house is overvalued, that means you're paying too much taxes. City Hall should see the inflation rate or the difference in the houses. And if it is 200%, City Hall should take action and impact should be paid no amount of money or should be asked for refund for valuating for a faulty valuation. We need to put much better checks and balances at the City Hall to ensure such mistakes are avoided in the future and fair taxes are charged to all the residents. I'm not saying it's going to be cheap taxes. I'm not going to be saying it's going to be more taxes. It has to be fair.
Okay.
I want our money.
Sorry, Shiv, that is your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Stephanie DiBattista for Ward 5.
Thank you. So I echo a lot of the comments that have been said so far. Our taxes are high. I definitely am not someone who looks forward to receiving that bill in the mail, that I can tell you. But as a lot of our colleagues up here have said as well, there's no way to operate on a 0% increase. There are services that absolutely have to be paid for. It's a fixed cost. We have to be able to come up with a budget that supports those services, such as police, garbage collection, things of that nature. But that being said, we still need to be responsible about the way that we're spending tax dollars. And we also need to look at taxes with a view to increasing them as absolutely minimal as possible. And it does take discipline. It means taking a good hard look at what the city is spending money on and cutting waste. Because there are a lot of things that the city doesn't need to be spending money on. And that money could be much better used towards going towards those essential services and keeping our property taxes reasonable. Now, another thing that we can do to keep those taxes reasonable is growth. Because the larger our tax base is, whether we're talking business or individuals, the more people there are to share in the tax burden. So something that we can really focus on as a council is ensuring that we are doing the right things to attract business to the City of London and to keep all of those talented grads that we're training at the amazing post-secondary institutions we have here to stay in London. And I think that if we're able to do that, if we're able to be disciplined, and if we're able to attract that new business, we can keep the taxes as reasonable as possible. And that's my commitment to you if I am lucky enough to receive a mandate from Ward 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along. In February of this year, the Middlesex London Health Unit opened London's first temporary overdose protection site, where drug users can use illegal substances under the supervision of a medical professional. They are currently making plans for at least one permanent safe injection site here in London, which would serve the same purpose. How do you feel about the health unit's plan to establish a safe injection site here in London. And we'll be starting this time with Shane Clark.
Oops. I got to learn a lot about opioid pain pills during my time as a street-level outreach worker for addiction services. One of the things that became quite clear to me was that someone's opioid addiction does not take the day off when they're not able to find a clean needle and a safe place to use. What the likelier outcome is that someone will be reusing an older needle, or they'll be sharing a needle with someone else. This is very problematic because it increases the risk of the spread of Hep C, HIV, bloodborne infections, abscesses, cellulitis, and MRSA. With powerful pain drugs like fentanyl becoming more prevalent in our community, there's also an increased risk of overdose death from using opioids. Services like supervised consumption sites provide folks with a way to use substances in a safer way until they're at a place in their lives when they're able to address their substance use. At a supervised consumption site, folks always have access to clean injection gear and are under the supervision of someone who can make a life-saving intervention in the event of an overdose. Supervised consumption sites literally save lives, and our supervised consumption site at RHAC has already proven that. But supervised consumption sites remain very misunderstood. I've heard the argument made that providing people with clean needles and a safe place to use is encouraging drug use. I disagree. Providing harm reduction services like supervised consumption sites does not encourage people to use drugs, but rather acknowledges the reality that people are using drugs. Some people say that we ought to aggressively enforce drug laws rather than give people a safe place to partake in unlawful activities. But we've tried that, and it doesn't work. We tried telling people to just say no. It didn't work. We tried telling people's families to yell, "Don't do drugs," at them. That didn't work. We tried having schools and churches yell, "Don't do drugs." It didn't work. We tried having we tried having the healthcare and justice systems yell, "Don't do drugs," and that didn't work either. So now, rather than telling people not to do drugs and trying to arrest our way out of this problem, which doesn't work, we are trying something different. We're acknowledging the fact that people are already using drugs, and we are considering this as our new starting place. Now the question is, how do we improve people's health outcomes and keep folks alive until they are ready to reduce or eliminate their drug use? By making sure that people can use in a safer way, we are not only improving people's health outcomes and reducing overdose deaths, but we are also saving taxpayers money because substance users require fewer and less complex health care interventions. An added benefit is that substance users are much likelier to reduce or eliminate their substance use as a result of attending supervised consumption sites. When we take injection drug use out of the alleys and move it into a safer space, we now have access to a population we would not have access to otherwise, and we are able to offer appropriate supports. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shane. Maureen Cassidy for Ward 5.
London is in the midst of a crisis comparable only to a big city like Vancouver. But here's where we're different. Across Canada, HIV rates are on the decline. Here in London, they're going up, driven almost entirely by sharing needles. It's the same with hepatitis C. Over the past 10 years, 400 people have died from overdose here. When we include deaths from infections like endocarditis, it's off the charts, and it doesn't have to be this way. Each of these people is somebody's son or daughter or sister or brother. As a human being, it hurts me to know that we need these sites, but we do. First of all, let's be clear. Injecting illegal drugs into your body is never safe, and this will not solve the drug crisis, but it will save lives today, so there's hope for recovery tomorrow. These sites work. The evidence is clear. They work because they provide a safer environment with medical supervision. And they work because they provide access to treatment, getting people the help they need. Now let's talk cost. This crisis is costing us billions. The cost to treat one person, one, with HIV is $1.3 million. One single case of HIV prevented pays to operate the supervised injection site for a year. I'm going to repeat that. One single case of HIV prevented pays to operate the site for a year. But what about treating drug users in hospitals or putting them in jail? I can't think of a more expensive way to deal with this. We can't afford to send more people to emergency rooms, and we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem. The locations of these sites will be near the areas where those with addiction are most often found, where people are publicly injecting drugs, where dirty needles are found. Locating these sites in these areas reduces crime, calms neighborhoods, and improves everyone's quality of life. We can keep talking about this. We can dither, and more people will die. The human and financial costs will continue to rise. The evidence is clear. These sites save lives. They save money. They free up hospital beds, and they free up police resources. They help neighborhoods, and they work.
Thank you. Phil Squire for Ward 6.
You know, as a city councillor, I constantly hear about difficulties in my communities. What kind of difficulties do I hear about? I hear about needles that are discarded all over neighborhoods, around schools, around places of business. Not satisfactory for any neighborhood. Secondly, I hear about the number of break-ins that are occurring in neighborhoods all over London. In Ward 6, there isn't a night that goes by where I don't hear about this. And one of the most common things that's connected to this is drug abuse and drug use. That people are high and they're leaving needles and they're committing crime under the influence of drugs. In my day job, I'm a lawyer and I represent people with mental illness. And in the last few years, I've seen more and more cases of what's called drug-induced psychosis. People who are, thank you. People who are psychotic merely because they're using drugs. It's a terrible, terrible thing. We either turn a blind eye to it, which my faith and my conscience won't allow me to do, or we try to do the best we can. A safe injection site is not something to be feared if it's in the right area. It will allow people, yes, to take drugs, but it'll also allow them to stay in the facility during a cooling off period so they don't cause community problems. But even more importantly, there will be other facilities in there that will try to help them with the terrible problem that they have. A family member of mine suffered a marriage breakdown because of drug use. A perfectly wonderful husband suffered an injury and became addicted, and the marriage ended. I can't turn a blind eye to that, and I know the majority of people in London can't do that either. Are safe injection sites something we should have everywhere? No, but in the proper setting, they'll save lives. They will absolutely save lives. And they are members of our community. They are human beings, and we owe a responsibility to them and to our community.
Mike Bloxham for Ward 6.
Well, as we've heard from the other candidates here, the opioid crisis is a public health emergency. It's a mental health emergency, and it's one that is hitting our city particularly hard. London's temporary overdose prevention site is doing necessary work in our community to help these people live another day, get the help they need, and get steps towards a drug-free life. There have been over 5,000 injections at the supervised siting on King Street that has happened there rather than in alleyways and in parks or in schools or in other public places. And at least 7 overdoses have been prevented at this site. It is literally saving lives. These sites also reduce the spread of bloodborne diseases like hepatitis C, HIV, and they bring opportunities to contact these people with treatment services. Those 5,000 injections that have taken place at this site means that 5,000 needles or more did not end up in our streets and parks. These are concerns heard across the city, and not just downtown, not just in Old North, not just in Old East. It is citywide. And I'm concerned about safety of our children, in particular as the father of an active toddler. I'm thankful that the provincial funding for this facility has been extended, and I will support further efforts to continue this work if elected, including lobbying for permanent sites that we need in this city. Hopefully it won't be permanent long term, but we need them now during this crisis, and hopefully to get us through it and get people, these are people who need help. They need our help.
Thank you, Mike. Shiv Chokani for Ward 5.
Thank you. I read somewhere London has the 3rd highest opioid cases in all over Canada. I want to make sure that all Londoners who need help receive the help on time without delay. The safe sites are crucial for building trust among vulnerable individuals in our community. This is taking the issue that is on our streets, in front of our lawns, in our faces, back alleys, close to our businesses, close to our homes, and getting it into a controlled, safe environment, and out of places where it is really disrupting our community. Once we have all the needed data, let health officials with expertise make the right decisions and do the right thing and give these individuals the help they need. Health officials can look at treatment options for these people which need help now. If a permanent site is proposed in our Ward 5, I will also take input from all the proposed locations from the people of Ward 5 before any such approvals. It has to be a good balance for each and every one of us. And like I said, I want to be the voice of our community, just not my voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiv. Stephanie DiBattista for Ward 5.
Thank you. So I'd be lying if I didn't say that I had incredibly complicated feelings about safe injection sites. And I'm betting if we took a poll of this room, probably most of you would as well. Now, I've had an opportunity to hear directly from the health unit when I was on the Board of Chamber of Commerce. And I do find the evidence compelling that there is a crisis and we absolutely need to have it under control. And in fact, the Chamber actually talked about writing a paper about how being known as a city with an opioid crisis is terrible for business, because why would you ever want to locate your business here? But that being said, there's the other side of that coin. There are people who have to live in an apartment with a safe injection site. Thank you. And those people can't be ignored. I mean, if we did a poll of this room, again, would any of you put a child in a daycare that is located next to a safe injection site? Would you put your child there? And if the answer is no, that means it really doesn't matter if you support the safe injection sites. There's more to this conversation. So we absolutely, as a community, need to come together and we need to get this problem under control and assist these individuals. But we have to do so while allowing all community members to weigh in on this, because the location of these sites is incredibly important. We have to locate them in areas where those who need the service can access the service, but where we're not creating a new public health and safety problem by solving this particular issue. So what I would ask is that when we're considering this issue, we think very carefully about where we want to locate these safe injection sites. I think that's where we need to go with this in order to tackle the crisis, but at the same time being respectful of London residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And Randy Warden for Ward 5.
Thank you. It is indeed a tough topic. Whereas I support the notion of a safe injection site, I have concern for the sustainability of any program that exists entirely as a financial burden on the taxpayer. There are other ways of doing this, and I'm not sure that those ideas are being looked at in the long term. I do like the idea of a temporary safe injection site to gather data before jumping in with both feet on a permanent site. We need safe injection sites that not only reduce harm, but get people into rehab and off of drugs. Thank you.
All right, we're doing some tough work up here. These have been some excellent responses so far. I really appreciate the well-researched responses we're getting from our candidates. This is wonderful. Let's lighten it up a little bit by talking about arts in our community. If you ask any Londoner in this room or at home what their hopes and dreams are for the city, chances are a vibrant community alive with arts and culture would be part of the answer. So the answer is, how do we get there? Well, the answers may differ. So as candidates here, what do you think the role of council should be when it comes to promoting arts and community vitality here in London? And we'll be starting this time with Maureen Cassidy.
The arts tell the story of who we are as a society, not only in good times, but also and especially in times of uncertainty, both economically and in terms of creating a better quality of life. Investing in the arts makes sense. Look around at where we are tonight. The Aeolian Hall is one of London's best live music venues. Places like this add to the economic and city-building work of local artists. And these investments pay off. In London, arts and culture contributes over $500 million to the city's GDP and provides about 8,000 jobs. Budweiser Gardens, consistently voted the best venue of its size in North America, adds significant revenue to the city's bottom line. In 2016, London was chosen to host the Country Music Awards, which added millions to our local economy. And next year, the Junos, Canada's largest entertainment event, is coming to London, bringing with them a multi-million-dollar economic boost. Arts programs create huge social benefits as well. Our London Arts Council has programs that improve the quality of life for people facing challenges from mental illness to dementia. And they foster a lifelong appreciation for the arts by putting artists right in our schools. Now let's talk about the role community vitality can play in our economy. We've had great success in attracting large employers, but we're competing with other cities in attracting talent. London businesses currently have 1,500 open jobs. When large companies conduct site visits, they usually evaluate the amenities and quality of life. The way we attract industry is by making the city attractive, making London the kind of place where their employees want to live. Dundas Place is another example of where we're leveraging necessary spending to upgrade ancient infrastructure under the ground in order to add to the vibrancy and vitality of the city. Over 90% of the cost here is for infrastructure upgrades like water and wastewater that need to happen now. When complete, it will be a showpiece area for the downtown, attracting visitors and residents alike to the festivals and events that will take place there all year round. I view the arts, culture, and community vitality not as ornaments or nice-to-haves, but as a vital part of our current and future prosperity, from which we reap enormous benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Phil Squire for Ward 6.
So I'm here to tell you that London has an incredible music and arts culture. If you go to the annual Beale Art Sale, I don't know if any of you have gone, incredible art is produced by the students there, who then go on to enter the broader world and sell their art. We've heard many actors come from London, so we have the talent in London. But up till now, we haven't had a really good range of venues for these emerging artists to play in. We have our festivals, but one of the things that people have said to me is we do need to expand those smaller venues. Not the Budweiser Gardens, not the large performing arts center, but something that will allow these talents to get started. And I'm fully behind that. And in fact, when the Palace Theatre needed money from City Council, they needed $100,000 to do repairs to their building, I was prepared to give it to them to enhance the arts. But you know what they did? They offered to pay it back. That's the kind of organization they were as a volunteer organization. So what else have we done as a city? We now have a music officer in the City of London. You wouldn't believe this, but one day I was talking to the people who come and sing the national anthem at our council meetings, and I talked to one of them afterwards, and I said, that was really great. And you know what she said to me? She said, yeah, it'd be even better if I could earn a living at this and if you guys had paid me. You don't think about the fact that they have to earn a living, and they do. So our music officer is helping them to get into the business of music, to use what they have to move on and be able to actually earn a living. We don't have to take care of the big acts that come to Budweiser Gardens or the ones who come to Centennial Hall. We need to nurture the Londoners who have so much talent. And that's the responsibility of a city council. That's the responsibility of us as leaders to do that. And I can tell you that these organizations are incredibly responsible with money. And as the Palace Theatre did, they'll often tell you that they're prepared to go out there and fundraise and pay it back. So we need to support London artists. We need to support it at the ground level. Let's get away from these grandiose schemes that we're going to build something, some kind of a Taj Mahal. Let's get the people who have the talent and let's give them what they need.
Thanks, Phil. Mike Bloxham for Ward 6.
So as most of us know, arts and culture are integral to what makes a city worth living in. A thriving cultural scene helps attract and retain residents and contributes to our sense of community. They give us something to share with our families and friends and encourage us to look at the world in new ways. What many people don't realize is that arts and culture also contribute greatly to our economy. The arts strengthen and support local merchants and drive tourism. They also spark creativity and innovation across all sectors. The cultural sector contributes over $500 million per year to London's economy. On average, the city's economy gains $24 per capita for every dollar spent on arts. And that's something that the city cannot ignore, even those who claim to focus exclusively on jobs and economic growth. It's fairly easy to see that City Council has a role in promoting arts and culture in our city. Community vitality is crucial to attracting and retaining residents. Part of that is maintaining our built heritage. Council has a clear role in protecting and designating heritage properties to preserve the character and feel of neighborhoods in our city. So we need to also consider planning applications carefully to ensure they match the scale and character of neighborhoods. This building, the Aeolian Hall, is a fantastic example of a treasure that has been protected and now feeds the creativity of the many Londoners who visit it and who perform in it. I have extensive experience fighting for architectural heritage in the city as past president of ACO and would continue this record on council.
Thank you, Mike. Shiv Chokani for Ward 5.
Thank you again. As I mentioned earlier, my business has won several awards for excellence in design and innovation all across Canada. We are very proud to put London on Canadian map. I proudly also support New Canvas of Life, which is an integration of art and charity by London Health Sciences. I feel we have some amazing talent in London, some amazing good artistic talent in London, which is not completely promoted and supported by our City Hall at all. If I'm elected, I will help support and promote to change that. Community vitality. The 2018 Vital Signs Report highlights access and affordability to housing as significant issues facing Londoners. This report identified significant gaps in service delivery and understanding of community needs by the City Hall. London has the highest poverty rate, which is 15% higher than our national Canadian average. The current City Council has failed to bring this rate down. The new City Council will have to take a completely fresh approach, which is necessary in recognizing and identifying which previous City Council has failed at the moment. As a good City Council we should bring better efficiencies, regular upgradation of high-quality city services, increase recreation and educational art programs, which is one of the key in promoting arts and community vitality in London. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiv. Stephanie DiBattista for Ward 5.
So when I saw this was a discussion topic, I was extremely excited. I've been a ballet dancer for 27 years, and I love talking about the arts. I've also been a ballet teacher for about 10 years. And one thing I'd really like to talk to you about tonight is youth involvement in the arts. So one of the things that I've noticed in my time teaching ballet is that dance is extremely expensive. I'm not sure if there's any parents in the audience who have ever had an opportunity to experience this, but competitive dance is more expensive than AAA hockey. So a lot of kids don't actually have the opportunity to participate in the arts because it's very, very expensive to do so. And the great thing about the arts is we're not really trying to build the next Misty Copeland or Picasso or what have you. We're trying to build good humans. So the reason why I can stand up here tonight in front of you all, why I have the confidence to do that, is completely because of ballet, 100%. So what I'd like to see is greater support for the amazing opportunities we have for youth, such as El Sistema, which, for those of you who don't know, is basically a free youth orchestra that is run by the Aeolian Hall. Woo. And also amazing programs such as the High School Project, which is a project that allows high school students to participate in musical theater. And all of these programs are free, which means they give kids who might ordinarily not have the opportunity to participate in the arts to do so. So I think, if anything, City Hall and maybe more high-profile London community members have every responsibility to ensure that we are there to assist these programs, whether it's to volunteer, whether it's to make donations, or whether it's even just to attend and take a selfie to help promote the event. And that's what I would like to see City Council do, is absolutely make sure that we are supporting our youth, because I truly believe that participation in the arts builds good humans. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Randy Warden for Ward 5.
This is an area I have an extraordinary large amount of experience dealing directly with the city and promoting arts and the community vitality. As chairperson for London Celebrates Canada, I worked with a dedicated team of volunteers, about 250 annually, that delivered more than 25 successful events over a 10-year period to this city, including Flag Day, the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Concert at Victoria Park, National Day of Honor, and of course for 10 years Canada Day at Harris Park that attracted 40,000 spectators annually. It is my position the city's culture office is there to provide coordination and interface with institutions like Tourism London, resulting in next year's Juno Awards, which is just magnificent, and I'm delighted to see that coming to London. I do, however, have concerns for tax-burdened duplications of effort, such as we witnessed last year when additional monies became available, and the city's response to it was to use these additional monies to create a duplicate event in the downtown core using paid staff and paid people that competed with 250 volunteers that were doing the same thing out of the goodness of their heart. I have a problem with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. And Shane Clark for Ward 5.
My very first job was with a theater group called Over the Wall Theater Company. Over the Wall was a community theater troupe of high school kids who the City of London paid with a municipal arts grant. We put on plays for kids at the old Central Library location on Queens Ave. I got to spend the summer of my 16th birthday writing and performing music and plays. I saved up all summer long and brought an electric guitar. For me, it was the first step that helped me build my confidence to the point that 22 years later, I'm now able to stand here in front of you as a city council candidate. My time with Over the Wall was a crucial stage of my growth and development into the confident man that I've become. And I had the opportunity because the City of London believed that they had a role in promoting arts and community vitality. City Council is responsible for a lot of things. It's responsible for ensuring the development and maintenance of our infrastructure, for passing bylaws, for putting measures in place to support London's most vulnerable, and for promoting the city as a great place to do business and raise a family. But when we promote our city, we're not bragging about how nice our roads are. We're not boasting about how well written our bylaws are. We do not try to attract business and young families by promoting how many shelters we have. The thing that we promote is our arts and culture scene. We promote our festivals. We promote our cultural events. We promote how eclectic and welcoming our neighborhoods are. We promote the things that make up the heart of this city. We promote the things that make London an amazing place to grow up. Our local government must play an active role in cultivating the arts in London and in supporting community vitality. London has so much to offer for both residents and those who are just passing through. I will also lump our sports team into the sports teams into the discussion here. Whether you want to see a sporting event, a concert, a play, or look at amazing works of art, London has got you covered. City Council needs to be London's biggest cheerleader for the arts, because I think that when it comes to arts and community vitality, we have a lot to cheer about. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Okay, moving along. City Council is not an island. Municipal governments, in fact, rely very heavily on the province and the feds for funding, regulations, and direction on a number of issues. So my next question to candidates is, if elected, how will you work with our current provincial and federal governments? And we will start this time with Phil Squire.
You know, I'll start when I get here. I was getting warmed up coming up. You know, this is something that I'm just going to tell you how I did this, you know, and it drives me crazy when I see elected officials or people running for office going on Twitter or Facebook and yelling at the provincial or federal government, because if you know politicians at all, they hate it when people do that to them, and they particularly hate it when other politicians do it. So that's not really the road to develop a relationship with either a provincial or federal government. So here's what I did. I immediately, when I was elected, made a point of meeting with every locally elected person. And the first thing I said to them was, you will never have to worry about me sticking a knife in your back. I am here to work with you on behalf of London. And if I have anything negative to say to you, I will do it in a private meeting. And since then, And since then, I've met with every single politically elected person of every political party. And I don't think we should for 1 minute continue this practice of using Twitter and Facebook to attack other levels of government, particularly when those levels of government have been duly elected by the citizens of Ontario. So let me tell you, I can contact any local MP, any local MPP. I can contact 2 present cabinet ministers in the present Conservative government, and they will talk to me, and they will listen to me, and they will want to know what I have to say. They won't always agree with me, but they will listen to me. This has to be a personal thing that an elected official does, elected official to elected official. If you don't do that as an elected councillor, or if you spend all your time bashing other levels of government, as I've seen many people do, you will not accomplish what you need to do. So next time there's an infrastructure issue and London's is waiting on the list, I can guarantee you I know who to call, and they will take my call.
Thanks, Phil. Mike Bloxham for Ward 6.
Well, since we're all elected by the same people, it makes sense that we all have open lines of communication between municipal, federal, and provincial representatives. I also would like to see the meetings where we have all 3 of those levels of government meet at the same time for representatives from London and discuss the issues that are that need to be addressed across different jurisdictional lines. It's not always easy for the city to communicate what it wants to see to the province and to the federal government. However, we need to be active in telling them what we need, whether that is in one-on-one meetings or whether it's in a group setting. Certainly there are channels of communication that are official, and it's good to have those unofficial relationships as well. However, the role of City Council is to work for the citizens of London and advocate on behalf of our city to the upper levels of government who, as I mentioned earlier, they take in 91% of all tax revenue. We only take in 9%, and we have to work on over 50% of the infrastructure in our city. So having those good relationships are key, and proving to them that we need those funds to ensure that city projects go ahead means that we need to work on those good relationships, and whether they're opposition members or members of the government.
Thank you, Mike. Shiv Chokani for Ward 5.
Hi again. My view is very simple. Federal government, provincial government, or municipal government, they all have to work together for a city, for any place to actually progress. We all have difference of opinions. I'm sure we all have, just right here, have difference of opinions. Some may agree, some may disagree with me. But the idea is to find a way to work with each and every level of the government to make sure that the projects are successful. At the end of the day, we are the ones that are the taxpayers. We want to make sure that whatever we need for the City of London is actually put through them. We remind and re-remind them again, keeping our ego, keeping our personal intentions aside, and make sure the best is done for the City of London. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiv. Stephanie DiBattista for Ward 5.
So prior to becoming a lawyer, I spent some time in federal politics. And I worked for the Minister of State for Finance on the committee side of things. So basically what happens is once you get through second reading with a bill, it goes to committee for study. And one of the things that myself and my colleague would do is we would take every Friday our colleague from the opposition critic who did the same job as us out for drinks, and we would go through the next week's agenda. And we would basically trade votes. So we'll support you on this, we need your support on that. And you know what? We got a lot done that way. And that's the way that I believe that any city council should do business with the provincial and the federal governments. You are not always going to agree. It's just, there's no possible way that every council is going to agree with every single decision made by higher levels of government. But that doesn't change the fact that City Council is dependent on funding from those levels of government, and that we have to work together in the best interests of the City of London. So my commitment to you, if I'm selected as the Ward 5 City Council member, is to always approach conversations with different members of parliament, of provincial parliament, with an open mind and with a view to cooperation and to moving forward an agenda that makes sense for the City of London. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Randy Warden for Ward 5.
First, one of the questions I do get asked at the door, I would just want to come right out and say that I have never carried a political card. I do not belong to any political party, and I play reasonably close to center. Who I am as a person, I am a small c conservative from a fiscal responsibility point of view. I'd like to know where the money's coming from. I'd like to know how we're going to raise it. I want to know how we're going to spend it. But I also recognize the responsibility of government to look after those that cannot look after themselves. Many of the successes that the group that I referred to earlier, London Celebrates Canada, enjoyed was because of an excellent collaborative working relationship over several governments. So we found that regardless of the political stripe, we had to work with that serving parliamentarian or legislative parliamentarian or with the councillor. We sat through 3 councils, we sat through a number of governments, and we worked very well with them. I have an extraordinary working relationship with our local member of parliament for London North Centre, and I have also met with our local member of provincial legislature. Although I've yet to have an opportunity to work with them, I have every reason to believe that we can work collaboratively for the betterment of Ward 5. And to Phil's point, I can tell you that I have enjoyed a good working relationship where I too can pick up the phone and call any of our parliamentarians or provincial parliamentarians or councillors. And they have always called back because they know that the best interests of the community is always come first and foremost on whatever we were working for. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Shane Clark for Ward 5.
A lot of the issues that we've got going on here in London right now are issues that are systemic in nature. We've got 17% of our overall population falling below the poverty line, which represents over 65,000 Londoners that are currently living in poverty. Now, we've just elected a new provincial government, and I worry a little bit about how helpful they're going to be with addressing this problem, because it seems like they are kind of leaning towards governing based on ideology as opposed to looking at evidence, as you can see from the fact they just canceled the basic income pilot, they've hit the brakes on opening new supervised consumption sites in other cities, etc. But these are problems that are big problems that are not going to go away without the resources that we require from the provincial government. Right now, a single person on Ontario Works gets a monthly check of $721. And I can tell you, because I used to be a housing stability worker here in London serving the homeless population, that average market rent for a 1-bedroom apartment is $750. So for a single person on Ontario Works, before you've paid your bills, before you've even put a roof over your head, you're already on the wrong side of the budget. Before you've bought food, before you've thought about transportation, before you've thought about putting weather-appropriate clothing on your own back. Now, here in London, we just elected some new provincial partners. We elected NDP all the way across. That makes me optimistic. However, with a PC majority government in the province, regardless of how receptive our NDP representatives are here in town, it might be tough for them to affect any real change. So what we need to be doing on our end is being a strong voice of advocacy, working with our provincial partners here in London so that when we see a government turnover in a few years potentially, they're well versed in the problems that we've got going on here, because our problems are not insignificant. Food insecurity, housing instability are major problems here, and they're problems that need to be addressed. We need to be looking at big systemic stuff, and we need to be standing on top of the mountain and shouting about the problems that we've got here, because we have legitimate problems. There's lots of great stuff to celebrate here in London, and I've been here my whole life, and I love this city. But our problems, as I said, are not insignificant. We need our provincial partners, we need our federal partners working with us on these issues. And until we get that kind of cooperation, we need to come up with some really innovative community-level strategies here to deal with the problems that we've got related to the opioid crisis, related to affordable housing in particular. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shane. And Maureen Cassidy for Ward 5.
Thank you. So my favorite part about being in municipal politics as opposed to the other levels of government is that it's nonpartisan. If you've ever picked up a paper or watched the city council meetings on TV, you've heard Councillor Squire speak or any of the other councillors, you know that we're speaking from our own personal point of view and from the points of view of our constituents. We're not being whipped by a party leader or a house leader. So that's my favorite part about municipal politics. And it allows me personally to have relationships with people from every single party across the political spectrum. I play my political cards personally, how I vote at the provincial and federal level, pretty close to my chest. It surprises Councillor Squire very often that we vote along the same lines, really often at City Council, more often than he acknowledges probably. But when we bring the provincial members of Parliament into our council chambers and we have a conversation going back and forth, when we bring the federal parliamentarians into council chambers and we have a conversation going back and forth, it's in a very respectful way. And personally, I have a very good relationship. We've gone through two kinds of federal government, starting with Conservative, and then we now have a Liberal government in place, and now we've gone the opposite at the provincial level. But across the board, we've always had members of Parliament, members of provincial Parliament from all of the parties. And it's really important that we as councillors work on that relationship because, as other candidates have acknowledged, we rely on those other levels of government for funding. Mike Bloxham keeps pointing out that municipal level of government gets about 9 cents from every tax dollar. So we rely on those other levels of government to fund projects and services at the municipal level. It's important that we keep up that dialogue, and it's why I've never ever supported partisan motions that have come into the council chambers. Anytime anyone has ever put a motion on the floor that says, let's admonish the provincial government for this, or let's admonish the federal government for this, that I don't personally agree with. I've never supported those motions because it doesn't help the conversation, it doesn't help the relationship. We're all in this for the good of London, whether it's a representative at the provincial level from the NDP or the Liberals or the Conservatives, or representatives at the federal level. We're all in this for the good of London, and we all need to work together to ensure that London keeps moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. This is the last of our big topic questions, so get your questions ready. But before we get to you, I do have one last one for the candidates here. Looking at wards 5 and 6, both located in the north end of the city, but there are some key differences. And so I'd like to know from the candidates here, what is the major issue facing your ward in the next 4 years? And if you don't mind, just mention while you're up here if you live in the ward. And we'll be starting this time with Mike Bloxham for Ward 6.
Sure. Well, I'd like to address two major issues facing Ward 6. The first one being a concern about the increase in crime in the neighborhoods, which we talked about earlier is really a result of the opioid crisis. It is a citywide issue, but we are seeing it particularly hard in neighborhoods that are right around the downtown core. And I myself have been a victim of this kind of petty crime, multiple car breaks-ins, whether I lock the doors or not, and I know how distressing that can be to someone when your property's been violated. Luckily, I've learned to not keep any valuables in the car, and nothing ever gets lost anymore. But I'm always advising victims to file a police report so that the police know where these incidents are happening, and they can increase patrols in those neighborhoods. Because if it doesn't get reported, it doesn't go into their stats, and it doesn't get acknowledged. It's important to get to that overall cause, the major one likely being the opioid crisis that I mentioned. And it ties into the community supporting overdose prevention facilities. Because too many of our neighbors are also experiencing poverty in this city. Social assistance is not near enough for anybody to get by on, as Shane previously mentioned. And people relying on it can't get ahead, particularly with rising market rents. So we need more affordable housing included in every new development, be it a neighborhood of single-family homes, or if it's an apartment building, high-rise, And we need to insist that the provincial government continue with the basic income pilot so that we can see it through to its completion and see all the benefits and faults both within that pilot. We also have to move away from punishing programs like Ontario Works and the Ontario Disability Support Program. Doing so will improve lives for those people who are currently on those programs and reduce the overall economic and social burdens on our society. I'd also like to see the Housing First initiative expanded to help people get off the streets and into a home so that they are not in a precarious position of being either on the street or in shelters. Somewhat related, and another issue in the ward is lack of enforcement of the rental licensing bylaw and property standards. I would like to see a review of the current licensing bylaw to ensure that units aren't exceeding the citywide limit of 5 bedrooms per dwelling unit.
Okay. Sorry, Mike, that is your time.
My time? Okay.
Lots of issues, lots of issues. Thank you so much. Next is Shiv Chokani for Ward 5.
Hi. As you know, we have a lot of issues in Ward 5. Some of the issues that may be coming up in the next 4 years. Marijuana on October 17th is getting legalized by the federal government. Provincial government may also start selling it through private dealers. Legalization of marijuana will actually see increased overdose people in our area too, and there will be more thefts. We also need better road maintenance plan, improved roads that may last longer. Like Grenfell Drive is in a terrible shape, a lot of potholes, and it won't be fixed till 2019. Efficient garbage pickup. I personally support an organic diversion program and would like the city to actually run incentives for this program, less usage of plastic, and again ask the city to give incentives for alternative programs. Timely walkway snow removal. I see during winter, not a lot of people walk around there, but when kids come back from school, I see some of them falling, and especially parents running down because the snow has not been removed from the walkways. We also are facing a huge growth, as Ms. Maureen Cassidy just said, $1 billion worth of permits are being doled out by the City Hall. We need a better, efficient plan and better infrastructure put in place with inputs of our residents for that growth. Also with growth there is much higher traffic in some areas, so we need to identify these streets, do a traffic study, and roll out traffic calming initiatives, such as speed bumps, etc., for safety of residents to avoid accidents. So these are some of the issues I feel we are facing in the ward. There are a lot more issues I can talk about, but I rather knock door to door and ask you what exactly would you like us to do and what are the issues you are facing in our ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiv. Stephanie DiBattista for Ward 5.
Thank you. So I see 3 major issues that are going to be coming up in the next 4 years. The first one is what I would consider to be called intelligent growth. So Ward 5, because of its location, is in a spot where it's very attractive to developers, whether we're looking at subdivisions, towers, etc. And this is becoming more apparent as we start talking about things like BRT because of the Masonville Mall area that's going to become a transit hub if the current plan goes through. Now, I know there's a lot of concerns going on about the high-rise that's proposed sort of near Masonville, and I don't think that it's going to stop there. I think it's going to continue. So one thing that I would say is something that I'd like to see prioritized is growth in a way that makes sense for the community it's being proposed in. So that's not to say that we don't have growth. I would disagree with that. We absolutely need to grow both economically and with our population if we want to move forward. But it needs to be in a way that takes a look at the neighborhood we want to do the growth in, and it makes sense for that neighborhood. Now, under that same heading, something that I'd like to see is I would like to see growth of business. And I'm not talking about the big box stuff like Indigo, Masonville Mall, things like that. I mean, I like to shop there. But what I think would be really cool is if there's an entrepreneur in Ward 5 that thinks, wow, I really want to open a restaurant. Let's do it in Ward 5. We don't need to go to Richmond Row. We don't need to go to Wortley Village. Let's put it right in our own community. Because some of the best restaurants that I've been to in the city and some of the coolest coffee shops are actually neighborhood hidden gems. Now, the third thing, and I think that this is more of a citywide issue, garbage collection. I know that I figure out whether it's garbage day based on what my neighbors are doing. I would absolutely like us to explore whether or not we can go back to a system where we have garbage collection once a week on a consistent day. So that way, I mean, if you're like me, you're not looking out your window to see if Steve's put his trash out. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Randy Warden for Ward 5.
I'm sorry, I think we're skipping over one of the questions. Do we live in Ward 5? Shiv?
Yes, I do.
Stephanie? Yes, I live in Ward 5. I think one of the greatest issues that Ward 5 is experiencing right now is confidence. Confidence is troubling to the taxpayer. It's troubling, and it's something I'm hearing about when I'm going door to door right now. We are not being heard. I'm hearing different examples as I've been going door to door, but there's one that's really recent, and it's very focused. We've just heard about the transit village. The transit village is pretty much blowing the top right off of elevations. 230 North Center Road is zoned for 6 stories, medium density. And it's been making its way through the system, and we were asked to consider a 22-story tower. In less distance from where I'm standing to the front of the building is a single-story residence. And you heard me earlier talk about transitional elevations. You heard me talking about the shadowing effect. You heard me talking about quality of life. What do we hear back from council when we've been bringing these concerns? NIMBYism, not in my backyard. When this went to council, the community spoke, and not a single person was against developing that subject property. It was the intensity that they were worried about. Going from 6 to 22 stories is absurd. And the response is to compromise 15 to 18 stories. And the outcome of that planning committee evening was for the developer to go back and talk to the community again. I'm sorry, the community was loud and clear that night. No. And we were looking for someone, our representative, that night to speak on behalf of the people. That's not happening. Our confidence is shattered. Just say no. And if this council can't say no, then let's start putting in people that can say no. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. And thank you for keeping me on track. That's right. Please, candidates, remember to mention if you live in the ward. Next is Shane Clark for Ward 5.
Hi, so I do live in Ward 5. I live in a neighborhood called Old Stony Brook. The question is, what are priorities in the next 4 years? And I know BRT is not meant to kick in for 10, but I can tell you that people want to talk about it right now. They're going to want to talk about it next year as well with the new council. So I think there's actually 2 issues that are top of mind for people. At least that's what I'm hearing from folks. And those issues are BRT and development. Improving our transit system here in London is going to open up the city for a lot of folks. With better access to transportation, Londoners will have increased choice with regard to where they want to live and work. If people can get across town more efficiently, they will be more confident in their ability to get to work on time and will be open to exploring different neighborhoods. This will lead to increased development, as we've already seen. An example is the planned tri-car building on North Center Road. London has changed drastically since I was a kid. I remember when Loblaws on Fanshawe Park Road was a farmer's field filled with bays of hail. You know what I meant to say. The city has expanded in all 4 directions. We are growing and development is happening. As we grow, it will be crucial for city councillors to be in their communities, connecting with residents and making sure that proposed plans for development work for existing residents. We have a shortage of affordable housing in London, and I believe that all municipal wards need to be part of that solution. I believe in scattered site affordable housing, and I believe that there ought to be affordable housing in Ward 5. But then, again, any development needs to be guided by consultation with community groups and residents. Many folks in Ward 5 paid a lot of money for their homes and have strong views with regard to how development ought to look in the ward. At the same time, we must understand that Ward 5, like all other wards, is but one piece in a puzzle, and that we must also take into account the bigger picture with regard to city building and planning for London's future. I'm aware that residents in Ward 5 have very strong feelings about both BRT and development. I commit to working closely with residents to ensure that I have my finger on the pulse with regard to resident concerns in the ward, and I will do my best to balance the specific priorities of the ward with the broader vision for the city and meet in the middle at a place that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Maureen Cassidy for Ward 5.
I've lived in Ward 5 for about 14 years now, and development is always a hot topic there. It's very important that we find an appropriate balance between development policies designed to keep property taxes affordable while maintaining the character and quality of life of our neighborhoods. Urban sprawl is the most expensive way for a city to grow, and yet historically it's been London's growth pattern. And not only has it cost us millions of dollars, it's also cost us valuable farmland, and it's hurt our environment through lost green space and increased smog. London has some of Canada's best farmland. Protecting our agricultural resources lets us build on our strength as an agricultural hub and create jobs in the agri-food sector by attracting companies like Dr. Oetker and the Original Cakery. Greater population density is more efficient and cost-effective. It saves us billions in infrastructure and operating costs because new development uses existing infrastructure like sidewalks, parks, and sewers, and existing services like libraries and fire stations, rather than having to build brand new. Policies that encourage efficient development patterns, particularly in our downtown, help to keep taxes affordable in neighborhoods like Stony Brook or Stony Brook Heights or Uplands. But when it comes to infill development in established neighborhoods, it's imperative that we find an appropriate balance. We must ensure that policies that help keep taxes affordable across London also respect the character of neighborhoods like Northridge or Grenfell or Stony Creek or Masonville. It's imperative that we don't let developers use policies around infill and intensification as justification for overly intensive developments in established family neighborhoods. Infill means making better use of an underused site. It doesn't mean a high-rise in every neighborhood. Intensification simply means more. It doesn't mean most. As your Ward 5 councillor, I've been committed to protecting and strengthening our neighborhoods. And when 230 North Centre Road came to the Planning Committee, I pushed back and I convinced the Planning Committee to send it back to the drawing board. I fought for that neighborhood, just like I fight for all the neighborhoods in Ward 5. As your Ward 5 councillor, I've pushed back when developers have tried to use these policies as a pretext to drastically change our neighborhoods with inappropriate high-density development. This is why I ran in 2014, and it's why I'm running for re-election in 2018, to fight for our neighborhoods, to fight for you in Ward 5.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thanks.
Thank you. And Phil Squire for Ward 6.
You know, I thought we were going to lose sight of the two parts to the question, and you can read what you want into it, but let me tell you, I've lived in Ward 6 my entire life. I was born in University Heights, I grew up in Orchard Park, and now I live in North London. I've seen Ward 6 change over the years. I've seen the development that works and doesn't work. And I'm just going to tell you that I think it's important that a councillor have that kind of relationship with their ward. So I know what the biggest issue is in Ward 6 because I've been hearing about it for 3 years. It's BRT. Let me tell you this. I went to a meeting in Toronto early in my term, and I was in a consultant's office, in a fancy office on the 17th floor of a building, and they unveiled their BRT plans. And they all started laughing. And they said, "You're in big trouble, Phil. This is coming right through your ward." And I was appalled. I was appalled that they didn't give me the respect and my ward the respect to at least speak to me about it in my ward before they made that decision. But let me tell you this, it's a big issue and we have to resolve it. And I've talked to the people in my ward as I've been knocking door to door. Most of them, when I come to the door, already know me. They say, "Hi, Phil, how are you doing?" And we talk about BRT, and not many of them say, "We want nothing." I find people say to me, "Phil, we need to make this work. We do not want to hear from another politician who says, here's my idea, implement it, and not pay attention to their constituents. You heard me earlier say, I'm a politician who takes his marching orders, who listens to his constituents, and they've said to me clearly that I'm to go back to the table, utilize the money that's available to the City of London, and devise a made-in-London, matches with London transportation system. Not a system that was created in a boardroom in Toronto. Not a system that we've spent millions and millions of dollars on consulting fees. So I don't view this as adversarial at all. I view it as a job that I have to undertake on behalf of my constituents I'm proud to do. The reason I feel that way is because I was born and raised in Ward 6. I know it like the back of my hand. I know what my constituents want me to do. They're not negative about BRT. They just want to see BRT incorporate what makes sense for the City of London, and I'm prepared to do that.
I want to say thank you to all the candidates. Let's give the candidates a round of applause for their well-researched responses. Now we get to put them on the spot. So this is where you get involved, okay? We're going to start taking questions from the audience. Andrew will be walking around with a microphone. If you have a question, just raise your hand and he will come over. You can pose your question to the panel. We will assume it is for all candidates unless you specify otherwise. Do we have a question there? And candidates, you will have 1 minute for a response for each of these questions.
Yeah, Bill Brock. Quickly, the proposed BRT system is a segregated, fixed, direct the people where to go. The real need is a flexible, integrated, where the people want to go. The second thing is, City Council is going after millions of dollars for bike lanes. Tonight, we heard about a needle crisis. We heard about an affordable housing crisis. Would you tell me, of the first two items, how they benefit your ward today, the next 10 and 20 years? Because I guarantee you the proposed BRT and the multi-million dollars on bicycle lanes won't. Would you please tell me how they will benefit you? Thank you.
Okay, so we'll be starting with Shiv Chokani on this one. And you can actually stay right there at your seat. There should be a microphone there for you.
Hi, thank you for the question. Like you actually understand, I'm just a taxpayer like you. And I clearly say, City Hall and all the candidates have forgotten the most important thing, us, the taxpayers. So clearly I requested Mr. Mayor Matt Brown, and I still stand by my words, democratic vote for the BRT by all London residents. If you guys vote yes, then if I am elected, I will see what is the best way to get the best bang for the buck to improve this. If you guys vote no, we scrap the project right then and there. Thank you.
You still have time. Do you want to address the bike lanes issue?
Thank you.
Okay. Stephanie DiBattista for Ward 5.
Thanks. Hi, Mike. I don't have an answer for you as to how those are going to benefit Ward 5 because, if I'm perfectly honest, I don't think that they do. Plain and simple. I think that there are more intelligent ways to accomplish supporting cyclists, and I think there are more intelligent ways to accomplish moving people around the city. Plain and simple. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Randy?
It was Bill, wasn't it? First of all, with respect to the BRT, I was actually somewhat supportive of the concept when it first came out. I fell from being supportive when I started to notice the process was less collaborative, less soliciting feedback, and started to become a little bit more prescriptive. All of a sudden, we had consultants telling us that King Street made more sense than York Street. All these different component parts. And one of the issues from Ward 5's perspective is we have entire parts of the ward that aren't serviced at all. And so if we're going to have a system, we need a system that will encompass the entire city. And I like your use of the word flexible. With respect to the safe injection sites, I see that more as a systemic problem upon our community. There's not a lot of evidence in Ward 5, but it does exist. I'm on North Center Road, and we have the wetlands behind, and there are people that spend the summers back in there, and we clean up the needles when we walk around. So it
Thanks,
does
Randy.
exist.
I apologize. That is your time. And next is Shane.
Thank you very much for your question. You mentioned a lot of things there. You touched on the opioid crisis, affordable housing, and BRT. And I just want to take a minute to note that, we're not going to either address the opioid crisis or address BRT. We're not going to either look at affordable housing or BRT. These are all things that we need to be working on right now because we need to improve transportation, we need to deal with the opioid crisis, and we need to deal with affordable housing. In terms of how is BRT going to benefit Ward 5, I think that it's going to benefit the city as a whole rather than Ward 5 specifically. And it's like I said earlier, it's not going to solve all of our transportation woes, but it's going to do what it was intended, which was within a very specific high transit use grid, it's going to move people around more efficiently, specifically people trying to get to school, trying to get people to work downtown. So it's not the perfect plan. It's better than what we have. I support the plan. We just have to keep in mind what it was designed to do, which is to move people within a specific grid and to be used as a tool for city building down the road. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you. Maureen?
Thanks, Bill. So it's important to note for BRT, we have 3,700 kilometers of roads in London. 24 kilometers are BRT routes. The rest are feeder routes feeding into the BRT system. There will be a 36% increase in service overall from the LTC. And if you want to talk about how it affects Ward 5, Ward 5 is part of the route that has the most ridership on the LTC right now. We have 2,200 rides a day on the north leg of the BRT route. And it's Ward 5 and people from Ward 5 who are most often left standing at bus stops because the bus is already full. 1, 2, 3 buses blow right by them in the winter when it's cold. They're late for work, they're late for class. BRT is going to fix all that by running every 5 minutes. There will be a bus every 5 minutes. No longer will somebody have to choose between being 20 minutes early for late or 20 minutes early for work or 10 minutes late. And as far as cycling lanes go...
Thank you, Maureen. Sorry, that is your time.
Okay, great.
The 1 minute goes very quickly, I realized. Phil Square.
So for Ward 6, I think, I listened to the people at Budweiser Gardens, and I waited till the end to hear the people who were too shy to speak earlier. And I think the primary benefit of BRT to the city as a whole is more frequency of service. But let me tell you this, it's going to come at a high cost. Let's talk about Winnipeg. Winnipeg put in a BRT system. And since they put in a BRT system, I hate to say this, but their ridership on their entire system has gone down. BRT is not a ridership driver. And if we don't get the ridership numbers we're looking for, guess who's going to pay for it? All of you out there and all of us up here. So I think the economic model is a real challenge for me, but there is a benefit, which is more frequent service, but we're going to pay for it. The cycling is a big issue. I hear about it all the time. The challenge in London is we've got to retrofit the whole city for bikes. We weren't built for bicycles, so it's a slow, cumbersome process, which I agree with. But there's been some real benefits in terms of the Thames Valley Parkway, and the longer we can keep that open during the season, it's going to be of great benefit to those cyclists who like to go all year. So I think that's a good thing. The rest of the retrofitting of the city has to wait until we do road work.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, yes, the BRT is going to be disruptive, but it will be worth as I mentioned before, the short-term pain for long-term gain. On Richmond Street, we're going to see increased traffic flow with the north and southbound lanes for cars because there won't be any buses in the way. Right now, you drive up that road almost any time of day, you have buses stopped in the right lane and vehicles turning left in the left lane. And it's a dangerous situation, especially with people who are in a hurry and are weaving in and out of lanes. So we're going to see Richmond as a main street instead of as a highway. It's going to have the BRT lanes running up the center and the car lanes on the outside. And it's going to be a much more pleasant place to drive. And once the underpass at Adelaide Street is complete and Western Road expansion is complete, people are going to take those routes instead of Richmond. So you're not going to see the traffic jams that we currently do. As for cycling lanes, I'd love to see more. More cycling infrastructure is always a good thing for a city. It increases economic development. People
Sorry,
who
Mike, we are at your time as well. Do we have another question from the crowd here? Just raise your hand if you have a question you would like to ask, and we'll run over with the mic for you. Trying to fit in as many questions as we can. That's why we're keeping the responses short.
Hi, good evening, candidates. My name is Janan. I live in Ward 5. My question is about affordable housing in the city, or the lack thereof affordable housing, both social, rent geared to income, but also just market rent housing that is affordable for all different parts of the demographics, like seniors having trouble finding places, to live on a fixed income. So I'm wondering where affordable housing and that issue fits in with your priorities for London.
Perfect. We'll be starting this time with Stephanie.
Thank you. And also, sorry to the last gentleman. I think I called you Mike. I apologize for that. I absolutely agree with you in terms of affordable housing being an issue. I think particularly for young people who have just graduated school, the path to home ownership is incredibly daunting. I know that rent prices are quite high depending on where it is that you want to live, and I know that there's been a lot of comments from individuals who are on fixed incomes, who maybe have retired or what have you, and are having challenges in that regard. I think as a city, the best thing that we can do is to look at making sure that we have affordable housing in most neighborhoods. There's only a certain extent to which we can control that, because a lot of that is driven by developers and driven by the types of neighborhoods we're talking about. I think it's definitely something that the city should look at in terms of how it's able to partner and to work on this, and it's also something that we should be looking at speaking with the province about as well.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. Randy?
I think it's a matter of leadership. I think that as we look at the growth of the city, that we identify that there is a need for affordable housing, and then as developers start coming forward with their ideas, I've always been keen on the idea that they have to consider implementing a certain portion of a project if it makes sense for the neighborhood to have affordable housing as part of that. So I think it's a leadership question from the city, and just pushing it back so that plans would be considered the way we look at bonusing right now, but we put it back and we include affordable housing as part of the formula.
Thank you. Shane?
Well, we've talked lots about the affordable housing crisis here in London, but we need to understand that the affordable housing crisis is really an income security crisis. The only reason that we need things like rent-geared income housing is because we've got social assistance programs that are full of holes, and we're not likely to see those holes get plugged up anytime within the next 4 years. The other problem is that we've got employers in our community who aren't paying their employees a living wage. So we need to see employers step up to help out with that. But in the meantime, when we've still got folks who don't have enough money and are underhoused, we need the city to step up and start looking at some innovative things like inclusionary zoning, for instance. There are things we can do at the community level to address affordable housing in the meantime while we wait for those big systems to change, but they're not going to change on a dime. So for now, I say let's look at inclusionary zoning. What can we do here at the local level to solve this problem? Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Maureen?
Thanks. So the affordable housing crisis is a crisis that's going on across the country. And a big part of the problem here in London is that our housing stock is aging, just like a lot of the infrastructure we have in London. And it's very challenging when a unit becomes available, the time that it takes to bring it back up to habitable condition, it keeps it offline for sometimes a few months at a time. It's great that Shane is talking about inclusionary zoning. This is one of the tools that hasn't been available to municipalities in the past, and it recently has become available, and this council has moved this forward. As part of the bonusing, we will start to see inclusionary zoning. So we will start to see developers, as they build projects, to set aside a certain percentage of their projects for affordable housing. Therefore, we will no longer have these ghettos where we put all the low-income people in one area. It stigmatizes them. It's not great. So having inclusionary zoning where a certain percentage will have affordable rents as opposed to market rents makes it much better for everybody. And and there's no difference between an affordable apartment or a market rent apartment. Nobody knows who's needs the affordable apartment or not. We've invested in significant money in housing in our term of council as well. We have the Housing Development Corporation, which will now allow the city
Sorry, Maureen, unfortunately that is over your time.
to develop more affordable units.
Thank you. Phil?
I wish I could tell you this was an easy problem to solve, and I wish I could tell you that the city can solve it on its own, but that would just be untrue. I think we're confusing terms a little bit. Affordable housing is housing for all kinds of different income levels. It can be the student who's just starting their first job. These aren't people that are necessarily suffering from poverty at that time. They're people who need affordable housing. The city cannot do it on its own. Right now, all of you will know, go look at what they're building on the outskirts of London. They are building huge buildings, huge houses and townhouses. That is to meet the market demand from people who are retiring, people who are coming from Toronto and are able to afford those houses. The private sector on this particular issue has to step up. They have to say, look, we are going to do the right thing. We're going to build affordable housing and have it as part of their the stock we built. We are not going to solve it by increasing ODSP or Ontario Works. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people taking on that responsibility. And if they won't do it, unfortunately, I'm a free market person, but City Council is going to have to say to them, you know what, you're going to have to meet that need because those are all Londoners.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad to see this council pushing forward with inclusionary zoning. That's going to be very important to getting the proper percentages of affordable housing units in. As I mentioned, it doesn't just have to be apartment buildings. It should also be in neighborhoods that are being built. When you go through some of these subdivisions, as Phil just mentioned, and see these $800,000 plus homes and 2,000 square feet, it's bad planning. This needs to be talked about at City Hall. When developers come forward with plans, they need to include houses that are of a more moderate size that people can afford as a starter home. And give people the opportunity to get into the market. Right now, people are being kept out of it because either the rents are too high or initial startup cost of buying the home is too high. And I agree with Shane as well that part of the problem is for people who cannot work or are unable to find work, they can't afford rent on social assistance, whether it's EI or OW or ODSP.
Okay, thanks, Mike. That is your time. Shiv Chokani.
I personally believe if there is a will, there is a way. So the fact is, London is 15% higher in poverty rate, and it doesn't have to be someone poor. We all have different phases of life. It could be a student, it could be a senior, it could be someone just middle-aged, fallen off the wagon that wants to start again. So affordable housing is needed. Like Maureen said, the city has zoning for affordable housing, but that's just the first step. It's not really going to get the job done. We have to have a much better plan. We have to have incentives. This is the need of the city. And we have to figure out a way, including provincial and maybe federal government, to see how we can make it through at a much faster pace. Enough talk, let's take some action. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiv. Okay, we're going to take a question now from our event organizer here at the Aeolian.
Yeah, well, we look for other questions. Put up your hand if you have one, but I'm going to ask a question. I'm a born and raised Londoner. I love this city. But one big frustration I have driving around is the amount of vacant buildings that nothing has been done with for years and years and years. I think, Shane, you brought up the old Central Library on Queen. Those buildings are being left and being bought up by major developers and then nothing being done. I want to know what you would do if you were elected or re-elected to start changing this problem, because it's a real frustration for a lot of Londoners.
Perfect. We'll be starting this time with Randy Warden. I'm just going to mention while the candidates are responding, please do put up your hand. Andrew will come around and we'll get those questions ready. Okay, Randy, go ahead.
I think a number of the buildings that we see as vacant and in the core area share a common banner at the top of the building. I think what we need to do is have a dialogue with the owners and try and find out what exactly are they looking for, and to see if there's something that works with our community needs to work towards that. I know that at one point there was a discussion with the Bell building downtown. I think that it can't be prescriptive from council. I think it's something that has to include the owners of the properties and try to find something that works for all.
Thank you. Shane?
Well, I think with some of the buildings that we're talking about, buildings that are publicly owned and that are being sold off to private developers, part of it is understanding that if the city owns the building, we're under no obligation to sell it. You don't have to. You can talk to a developer and say, well, what are your plans for this building? What do your timelines look like? And does that fit in with what we've got planned for London in terms of city building for the future? I don't like seeing these big buildings sitting around empty and not occupied either. But part of it that we need to be looking at before we look at selling stuff off is there the way that we can use these spaces to address some of the complex issues that we've got going on here in London. So I'd love to see City Council saying, what can we do with the assets that we already have in terms of real estate? Are we able to plug gaps in our community with these spaces? And if we are going to sell them off, can we get an idea of what the plan is going to look like to make sure that it fits with our vision for the city? Thank you.
Thank you. Maureen?
Thanks. So if we're talking about two different kinds of buildings, if we're going to talk about old heritage buildings that a developer may buy and then sit on for a while and then let it go through neglect, and then there's no choice but to demolish. That's a really challenging issue, and that's why we have the heritage listing. So when property purchasers are looking at purchasing a property, they see that it's on the listing. And so when it comes to planning committee and they look for a demolition permit, we as council have to push back, and we do push back, and we have pushed back, and we say, you knew that this was on the heritage listing when you bought it, and we're not going to let you demolish this building. So that's one issue, and it's still very, very challenging. The other issue is the downtown vacancy. There's one property owner in particular that owns about 60% of the vacant buildings downtown. And one thing that this city council did, again, because the province finally allowed us this tool, under the provincial laws, we were required to rebate a third of the property taxes to a property owner that has a vacant building. The province allowed us to not do that anymore, and we have taken that off the table. So now,
okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Maureen. That is your time.
Yeah, Maureen stole my thunder. I don't know if I'll get a round of applause on the vacancy tax rate. Wow. Yeah, thanks. I want some of it, No, we took away the vacancy tax rate. Look, we all know you can't order a person after they bought a building. You can't say, you shall rent out the whole building. We can use the heritage tools we have, and we should continue to use, to make sure when they buy that building, they know what their responsibility is. And I think this council's been pretty good to deal with that. We've had some where people disagree with us, but it's been difficult and it's been a challenge. The other issue is we can deal with it in the issue of downtown parking. We can say to them, look, you can't just have a lot and say it's parking for your building over here and have it like that forever. Something is going to happen with that piece of property. If we use the tools we have and are reasonable about it, we can make things happen. It is unfortunate that in London there is one developer who owns a lot of buildings. I met with him, and I can tell you after meeting with him for half an hour, I was so exhausted and I had a headache. I didn't really understand what he was trying to do with those buildings. So we've got to just continue to push and squeeze and use the tools available to us.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Mike.
Well, yes, I was starting to talk about property standards earlier, and part of the problem is lack of enforcement. There is a bylaw for property standards, and unfortunately, it's a complaints-based system. So if there are empty properties that are deteriorating, it's up to the neighbors to report that to the city and have bylaw enforcement come out and assess what's going on. I'd like to see more of the bylaw resources allocated to enforcing property standards on a more active basis, as opposed to relying on citizens to report on their not so pleasant neighbors with empty buildings. And it goes beyond heritage buildings. This is all buildings, because as soon as you have one or two houses on a street that have been sitting empty, it starts to bring down the neighborhood. And you see unkempt lawns and garbage that doesn't get cleaned up. It's very detrimental to neighborhoods. So I want to see just better enforcement.
Thank you, Mike. Is the other mic there? Oh, we've lost a microphone. Okay. That's okay. You can pass it down to Shiv. That's fine. Yeah.
Hi. Being a businessman, I actually understand how a developer thinks when he's buying such properties. I'm not into real estate, but I do understand their mindset. As other people mentioned, there are bylaws in the city, but bylaws can be amended, changed. That's what the city hall is there for, to change it to the needs of the city. It may take some time, but we have to do it. Secondly, we can always have a talk with the developer. Like Phil said, he has a talk with the developer, but we have to understand their mindset. We have to give them some incentive, and we have to let them know, if not a time frame, if they do not develop the property, there may be consequences by taxes, other things. We will actually change just because of that. And that may improve, at least help pushing what Andrew is talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Thank you. Not to get too dorky with my economic terminology here, but I think that currently there's a good number of sticks or disincentives to having vacant buildings. I think they're just starting to take root now, but there may also be an opportunity to create positive incentives for doing development and not just purchasing up a whack ton of buildings to leave them sit empty. And there's always difficulties associated with developing things such as the LC Perrin Library building and other places like that. But I think the best thing to do would be some sort of collaboration where we create disincentives and consequences for failing to develop, but at the same time, we can also, as a city, be a good partner in terms of encouraging and assisting with getting these buildings useful.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe we have another question from the audience.
Hi there. My name is Sean. I've lived in Ward 5 for about 20 years. So my question is for Shiv, Stephanie, and for Randy. I know that before this current council, I attended 3 BRT meetings in our ward. And now during this term of council, I've attended another 5 BRT meetings in our ward. So my question for you is that, given that you're against the BRT plan, how specifically, because we've already talked about how people can give input, and they have, how specifically are you going to plan to cover the $300 million in road costs that are going to need to happen without raising my property taxes?
Okay, start with Shiv.
First of all, just like I said, even I have attended a number of BRT meetings just like you as a taxpayer. And when every time the city council actually says, this won't cost you a thing, I honestly do not believe it. It has to come out of your and my pocket, first thing. Secondly, the amount of doors I've knocked on in Ward 5 so far, and not that many yet because I work full time, the amount of doors, no one wants the BRT. Everyone has a different issue. Someone has the issue that they don't want the BRT because of tax and other reasons. Someone doesn't feel it's the best plan for the city, and major changes needs to be done if it has to be approved. So I honestly feel if it is put to vote, I don't think this would actually pass, and most residents would vote no for the BRT. And if they vote yes, I'm willing to work with the residents. Like I said, a city councilor is a voice of the city, voice of the ward, and I do not represent just my personal self when I'm in the city council. So please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Thank you for your question. So just to be clear, I'm not against rapid transit, full stop. I'm against the current plan. And if you look at the funding packages that have been proposed by the federal and provincial governments, it's for transportation infrastructure. It doesn't expressly state what it needs to be used for. So that doesn't necessarily mean that there can't be some sort of plan to revamp some of the roads that you're talking about. And I agree with you. There's crazy potholes all over the city and things that need to be addressed. It's just that the current plan has a lot of difficulties that need to be addressed. Now, any plan, I'm sure, can have some kind of component involved that addresses the issues that you're talking about. It's just not the current one that I would be supporting. Thank you.
Okay, and Randy.
Thank you, Sean, for your question. Like Stephanie has mentioned, I too have met with our other members of Parliament, levels of government, and the money doesn't vanish just because we don't proceed with this particular plan. We need something that makes sense. With respect to the BRT, I'd like to see us just back up to a bit when we were less prescriptive and more consultative, and we were engaging the community, and that did happen at one point. The one thing that is really troublesome is that we talk about the BRT all by itself, but there's all kinds of infrastructure issues that are related to this. We have a part of this of Ward 5 that is still on well water and on septic systems, and we just keep ignoring it like it'll go away. But when you knock on doors, there's no plan, and so it's a matter of improving our transportation, improving our systems, using the resources that are available, because there are still resources that are available, and try to come up with something that actually will improve Ward 5 as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Randy. I'm going to give the other candidates the opportunity to chime in as well. Does anyone else here? We'll go down the row. Shane, do you want to say anything on this? No? Okay. Maureen?
So I just want to address the funding issue. The $170 million from the province is tied to this business case. It is not, here, use it for whatever you want. They studied our business case for a year. The Minister of Transportation stood at London City Hall and responded directly to a CTV question and said, it is tied to this business case. The federal funding requires shovel-ready projects that will be substantially complete in 10 years. If we go back to the drawing board, we will not qualify for the federal funding. And the $170 million from the province is tied to this business case.
Thank you. Phil?
Yeah, just on that issue, we may not have noticed, but there's a new government in Ontario. That was the last government. So this government, my understanding of the present government is they've allowed Hamilton, and they've said to Hamilton, look, the money's there for you. You'll be able to use it for what you want. But I want to directly address your question, because there's a premise behind it. And I think it is that, well, if we put in the BRT, all these people are going to get out of their cars. They're going to go on the BRT, so we won't need that $300 million in road repairs. I think that's it. No, you're shaking your head. Yeah. So we're already covering all that infrastructure, but the repair cost of those roadways will still be there whether we have BRT or not. I'm sorry, it will be. And here's why. Because, let me finish. Yeah, so here's the problem. The problem is, and this is the big assumption beside BRT, is everybody's going to jump on this BRT system, and we're not going to have all those other infrastructure costs. It's just not true, and it hasn't occurred in any other jurisdiction, particularly Winnipeg, which is really suffering severe tax increases, increased costs, because people are not riding BRT.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we do have to cut you off for time there. Mike, do you want to comment on this one as well?
Yes, please. I think Sean's question was about the $300 million that the city will now have to spend on upgrading these roads instead of using the funds from the federal and provincial government. Yes. So that's exactly it. If we give up on this plan, we forfeit those federal and provincial funds that will cause increases on our taxes to repair these roads or expand them, as we're currently planning for Wonderland Road. And it'll mean ongoing tax increases at the property tax level.
Okay, thank you very much. I know we could talk about BRT for another 2 hours, but we are running short on time, so we actually only have time for one last question. I do want to try and squeeze that question in, and I believe we have one ready at the back here.
Hi, my name's Michelle. I live in Ward 5, so I have a quick question regarding crime in my area, and Ward 6 as well, because we're very close to each other. In the Masonville area, I've seen a lot of destruction of bus shelters, as well as 2 days ago, there was a woman attempted mugged and shots were fired. So I'm just curious to know if you feel council is doing enough to kind of reduce crime in my area, or if not, what would you suggest to be a solution?
Okay, perfect. And we will start with Shane Clark this time.
Well, to your point, I think we're starting to notice some changes in Ward 5. Like I said, I grew up in London. I've been here my entire life, and I can tell you that I kind of have a feel for the different vibes in different neighborhoods. And I can tell you that back in the day, people in Ward 5 used to say things like, oh, that's an East End problem. We say, oh, that's a downtown problem. There's no such thing anymore, just so you know. If you come outside of Masonville Mall, there's someone panhandling on the median. Like, poverty is in every neighborhood, crime is in every neighborhood, addiction is in every neighborhood. We need to be proactive with addressing these things, and part of it is addressing what the root of these things are. A lot of the time you have people who are committing crime because it's a necessity. They're not getting enough money to get through the month, or they've got an addiction that's not being dealt with effectively because we've just recently got the supervised injection site, which may or may not be lasting. It might be going away. We need to look at root causes of things rather than just put band-aids on things and say, well, what are we going to do about all this crime? We need to say, well, what are we going to do about all the cause of this crime, which is, income insecurity issues, addiction issues.
Sorry, Shane, I'm going to have to cut you off there. I know there's a lot to say, but we're going to try and get everyone in. So, Maureen, on this one?
Thanks, and I agree with Shane about the root causes. It's a really important aspect that we have to look at, and we have to ensure that we are working with our most vulnerable and trying to ensure that we bring the quality of life up for everybody in the city and that nobody's getting left behind. But there are also things that we can do as communities. We've gotten away from being good neighbors, from knowing who our neighbors are. And I know in Ward 5 that there are pockets where they're doing this again. There's a new subdivision just on the north side of Sunningdale, and they have one of the most vibrant community associations I've ever seen. And I was involved in starting the community association in Stony Brook about 6 or 7 years ago. So to say that this is the most vibrant, it's really incredible. And they do things like Neighborhood Watch. They do things like group evening walks.
Sorry,
Everybody's
Maureen,
out and they see what's going on in their community, eyes on the street.
Thank you. Phil?
Yeah, I actually met with the police chief about this and Neighborhood Watch about it, and I'd like to offer an easy solution, but I can't. Like, you know, on Sunday, I had some stolen goods that I was trying to recover, and I phoned the police because I didn't want to recover them myself and maybe get in trouble. 3 hours it took the police officer to arrive, and that's not their fault. That's a resource issue. So if we sit back and we just say, and I've heard a lot of my constituents say, what are the police doing? What are the police doing? Well, the police are working, believe me, they're working very hard, but they don't have the resources to answer all of these things. You've got to turn to community steps, and we're doing that in Ward 6, and in fact, I'm having a meeting about it with my neighborhood on September 12th. Neighborhood Watch will be there. We're also doing neighborhood safety audits, which are offered by the City of London, where you can walk with a city employee through your neighborhood and do all those things that don't require police intervention to make your neighborhood safer. So my answer to you is, get involved, do something, care about your neighborhood.
Mike?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I see this as becoming an ongoing problem. It's only going to get worse if we don't get to those root causes. When people are in an impoverished state, usually that comes with depression, and that becomes a mental health issue. And to some people, they turn to drugs or alcohol or other illicit activities to get through the day, to get by, so they don't feel so terrible. And unfortunately, some of these drugs are extremely addictive and cause people to go into psychoses, and they do bad things. That doesn't mean they're bad people. It means they're doing bad things and they're hurting others. But in the most of these cases, it is petty theft. It's a nuisance crime, but we do need to make sure that there are those supports for people who are experiencing these problems and reach out to them.
Thanks, Mike. Shiv.
Hi, I myself got robbed 9 years ago. I had gone to work and my house was completely cleaned out. Police came in and they said to me, it's a safe neighborhood, you need not worry. 2 months later, my neighbor got cleaned out. So all I'm trying to say is the root cause of all these problems, and it's not now limited to one part of the city, it's all over the city. Poverty, high drug abuse in London. Like I said, I read somewhere very recently, London's the 3rd city in all over Canada with the highest drug abuse. We need to address all this. Another problem in the city of London, although people may disagree, I get 3 times more applications for students looking for jobs, and they cannot find one. That's why the planning the city has done, city has failed to retain students in London. The brilliant ones don't want to stay here. As soon as they graduate, they all pack their bags and leave.
Okay, thanks, Shiv. Sorry, that is your time. Stephanie?
Hi. So I've personally had my vehicle broken into 3 times. I don't keep anything in my car, so there's nothing for anyone to steal. What I do every time that happens is I make sure I go to the London Police online reporting and I report it. I never have an officer attend at my house or anything like that, but I do report the crime. And since I've started doing that, and this is not just because I've been doing it, but I assume everyone in my neighborhood is, I've seen a lot more police cruisers patrolling the neighborhood. So I think there's a misconception here that Ward 5 is really safe and there's no crime. So what's really important to help allocate police resources is to make sure each and every time, if you have your garage broken into, your car, report it. Because the police have to know that that's occurring in order for them to be able to send adequate resources to your neighborhood. And I think that that really is step 1 in terms of making sure that that's addressed.
Thank you. Randy?
We're hearing a couple of different things. First of all, from what are the contributors of the crime? That's handled through good programming. And I think there are lots of initiatives we heard or already in place that have to be continued and fed properly. But when a crime actually is committed, to your point, Michelle, it's, we have to get engaged. You see a crime, you have to call it in or report it. You have to let people know. When the bus shelters were all destroyed that one day, I did call it in, and I was within an hour of one of the shelters. I knew it was an hour because it was perfectly fine when I went one way and it was destroyed. And during that time, there was numerous people that had either witnessed or had just kept on going, and I was the first one to call in on that shelter. I think what we need to do is, as citizens, is we have to know that our responsibility is to act and call in so the police can engage.
Thanks, Randy. Thank you very much. I'm afraid that is all the time we have for questions. We do still have a chance for each of the candidates to give a quick closing statement, so this will be just 30 seconds. We'll be starting, continuing to move down the line with Maureen Cassidy, and you can just stay in your chairs for this. Yeah.
Thanks. So this campaign's about one thing. It's about saying yes to the success of the last 4 years. Last election, London voted for change. And what's happened since then? Reduced debt, over 5,000 new jobs, reduced unemployment, significant investments in roads and infrastructure, a strategy to address poverty, improvements to our parks, green spaces, and recreational trails, a better quality of life for you and your families. Let's keep going. Let's build on this momentum. And October 22nd, say yes to success, progress, and momentum, and say yes with a vote for Maureen Cassidy. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Phil Squire for Ward 6.
You know, you probably noticed that I don't use notes, and I speak directly, and I do it as well as I can to give you what I feel and know about a particular issue, and a lot of these are embedded with me. You know, I always say that I just speak what I feel at that particular moment. My wife said to me, one day you're going to say something or we're going to have to leave town. But, you know, I really feel strongly about Ward 6 and the needs of Ward 6. I've lived in Ward 6, as you know, my entire life. I am so familiar with the area. I'm familiar with my constituents. As I'm out canvassing, they invariably I'll come to the door, they say, hey, Phil, we want to talk to you about this. And that's what a councillor has to be. A councillor has to be engaged with their community, they have to know their community, and they have to carry those community needs back to City Hall. And I think I've done that, and I've worked hard doing that, and I will continue to do that if I'm re-elected.
Thank you, Phil. Mike?
Well, thanks for the hosting tonight here at the Aeolian Hall. All the questions that we talked about tonight gave me a chance to highlight some of my priorities for the city, such as addressing poverty, homelessness, and public health, taking the opportunity to provide for federal and provincial funding to implement a rapid transit system, and taking good care of properties in London, including residential rentals and buildings of heritage value. As an experienced community volunteer, advocate, business owner, I have the experience and the vision to push for these priorities on council. With your vote on October 22nd, you can elect new energy for London and Ward 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Shiv?
First of all, thank you everyone for listening to me. And again, like I started, a democratic vote for a bus rapid transit for all London residents. It's very crucial. Better accountability, more transparency, and sincere community input to make better improvements for London and Ward 5. To use our city tax dollars wisely and deliver services needed for the community. For a better change, I believe we have to make better choices. Your best choice for Ward 5 is Shiv Chokhani. Vote and elect me as a City Councillor of Ward 5, and I, Shiv Chokhani, promise I will be a voice in London City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiv. Stephanie?
Thank you, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. So the question that you have to face on October 22nd is, who do you think is going to get up in City Hall and advocate for you? And that might be a concern that you have, or it might be a brilliant idea that you have. And I'm asking for you to give me that mandate because I think I can do that job. I do that every day of my life. I listen to concerns, I listen to ideas, and then I fiercely advocate for them. And I promise you that if you send me to City Council, I will fiercely advocate for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Randy?
First of all, thank you everyone for coming out this evening. I'm not sure I agree that this last 4 years have been as magnificent as we hear. There is a confidence issue. We saw it at the night of the Planning Committee when everyone spoke against and still it was not heard. You need a representative that is listening to you and engaging with you in an open dialogue that happens throughout the 4 years, not as we get closer to the election day. My name is Randy Worden. Check my website, randywarden.ca, for the rest that we couldn't cover tonight. And I look to be your counselor come October 22nd.
Thank you, Randy. And Shane.
I just want to thank Aeolian Hall for hosting this event tonight. I want to thank all of my other candidates that are up here on stage tonight for having the courage to jump into the race and do whatever it is you can to try and make London a better place. I want to thank all of you in the audience tonight for showing up and being civically engaged and showing up to talk about the issues that matter to Londoners. And to the residents of Ward 5, I want to say, I hope you'll support me in October. I'm ready to get to work for you, for Ward 5, and for London. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shane. To all of our candidates for stepping up, for running, for getting engaged, give them a round of applause. And of course, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out and attending tonight, as well the Aeolian Hall for hosting these debates that are so important. When the polls close on October 22nd, be sure to tune in to Rogers TV for in-depth analysis of the results. Until then, I'm Christine Teleski. Have a great night.